Finance Minister in Parliament in hopefully maybe a few minutes' time. But before we do that, we'll be talking to some good friends of Citi FM and Citi TV to just touch on some, a few topics, possibly their expectations for this advanced budget. It is not the main budget, obviously, but then maybe they would have some few thoughts on it. And hopefully we'll cross over to Parliament after the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is done with the presentation. We'll come back into the studio and give our thoughts and our takes on some of the key things he mentions, and then we'll wrap up. So let me introduce my guest for this morning's pre-budget discussion. I have right in front of me Dr. Edu Sasakodia, economist with the University of Ghana, and also have here Mr. Clement Boateng, Vice President of the Ghana Union of Traders Association. Boss,
thank you.
How are you?
You're welcome. Yes, I'm okay. Thank you for having me.
Nice one, nice one. Now, for a lot of people, I mean, the advanced budget is not something that's very popular. I mean, as an economist, before we even get into that, 2020. Yeah. It's been quite the year. I don't think anyone expected this year to turn out the way it has turned out. How has the year been for you, 2020 in review, even though we've not ended?
Well, it's been a difficult year. Nobody expected the pandemic. I think the pandemic brought two crises to the whole world: the health crisis and the economic crisis. I think the 2008 financial crisis only came with what we call the supply shock. It did not come with a health crisis. So this challenge was very big. It has been very big. The health crisis, of course, the virus itself, killing people, quarantining people, and then the expenditure, the health expenditure, provision of PPEs, building isolation centers, all this expenditure, we didn't plan for it. And you come back to the economic crisis, supply shock and demand shock. Supply shock in terms of production, the effect on production, and then also the demand shock in terms of the effect on the expenditure. So, for example, the hotels, people are not demanding, so they lay people off. So if you're a worker, you're laid off, there's a reduction in your expenditure. So cumulatively, they affect the total expenditure, consumption expenditure in the country. This pandemic has brought serious hardships on Ghanaians, health crisis and economic crisis. And we have also seen the effect on GDP growth rate, the effect on fiscal positions. Borders were closed. Government was not getting the needed revenue from from trade. We cut down exports, we cut down imports. And so now it opened doors for local production. Yeah. So I'm sure every single sector of the economy was affected, be it agric, industry, or service. Schools are closed down, lecturers are in the house, teachers are in the house, and those in the private school are also affected, very much affected. In fact, during the lockdown, people in the transportation sector were all affected, and because Ghana's economy was more like 80% informal sector, and when you lock down the country like that, so I'm not surprised that as the second quarter GDP growth rate was negative because of the lockdown. Yeah. When you lock down 80%, and you remember that when you lock down, some businesses can work from home, they can work online. But if somebody sells spare parts at Abosokai, you ask the person to stay home.
Like our
brother. How is our brother going to work from home? So we have seen the negative side. I think that it's been very challenging. Oil prices. We budgeted for $62 per barrel. We are ending the year, currently as we speak, it's about $42 per barrel. So we've lost about $20 per barrel. And then also the remittances. If you have brothers and sisters abroad, they're in lockdown, they're not going to work. How are they going to get a few dollars, hundreds of dollars, and send to you? So the effect on remittances, the effect on, I think that FDI is doing well. I don't know why. Yes. Why FDI is doing well.
Over 400%.
Yes,
in the pandemic. For the first 6 months.
That some businesses have also benefited. Yeah. Like yourself. Because many things are now going on virtual. So, churches and political parties have come to buy your airtime. I'm sure Citi TV, your airtime is being bought by this individual. So, and the telecommunication industry is thriving. Many things are now being moved online. I'm sure our brother will start selling his things online.
He has an online platform somewhere.
So that, and the lesson now is local production. If COVID has not taught us anything, it has taught us two things. One, to do local production. We cannot continue to depend on other countries. Last year, we imported $3.2 billion worth of items from China alone. Our imports amounted to $13 billion. The money that the receipts we get from cocoa is used to import only 3 items: rice, poultry, and sugar. So this COVID is just teaching us how to do local production, how to be inward looking. It is also telling us to go digitization. You know, Excellency Dr. Baumia, when you mention digitization, you mention his name. When you're moving your trade online, you are moving things online, you are doing cashless. You remember that during the COVID times, even now, many Ghanaians are advised to do cashless, to use mobile money in payment. So this digitization is also taking shape. And I feel that in every problem, there are some blessings, and we must learn opportunities. The opportunities here, as I have said, local production will help us create jobs. The $13 billion I said is equal to $13 billion worth of jobs created in other countries. So we do local production, we have our factories revamped, and you employ people. It saves the city. The depreciation of the city is just about demand and supply. So far as you continue to demand foreign currency, the value of your currency will dip. So the local production will help us create the jobs. It will help us save the city. It will help us, be competitive. And I think that this is the way to go. This is the way to transform the economy. It's been a difficult year, but we are getting out of it. The blessings we have in the country is such that many countries are in recession. Ghana is not in recession. I'm waiting for the third quarter. Second quarter we grew negative. I'm waiting for the third quarter figures before we can conclude that the country is in recession or not. But I'm very optimistic that the third quarter figures could be positive because of the informal nature of our economy. So we are not in recession yet. Many countries are in recession, but graciously, Ghana is not in recession. And I foresee that 2021 will be better than 2022. We just want the 2020 to end. We are so much in a hurry to let the year end.
I mean, speaking of possible growth, I know the IMF essentially projected that we'll end the year at 0.9%. But at the last Monetary Policy Committee press conference, the governor was optimistic that we could, hit maybe GDP growth of 2%, 2.5% by the end of the year. Now, you mentioned the fact that now businesses have been moved online. Persons, in the informal sector were highly affected, like the Vice President of GhBudget here. Now, do you have an online platform? You are, and how did 2020 turn out for you?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me.
Yes, sir.
And, I'm so glad to be on your show this morning.
We're happy to have you.
Yeah, like you rightly said, until the advent of COVID-19, the economy was doing well, and our businesses was also doing well, because regarding trade facilitation, the government tried as much as possible to put a lot of things in order so that it could, facilitate trade. And some of the things that GhBudget, and for that matter, businesses in the country were, agitating for, was also one way or the other solved by the government. We could all remember that there was a removal of 17.5% VAT on financial transactions, which was a very good news to us. And also, we also had a 50% benchmark reduction on the goods, and then 30% on vehicles, because we were crying for reduction of import duties, because we complained that within the sub region of the West Africa here, Ghana was seen to be, the only country paying excessive import charges, duties. Yeah. So the Vice President, put in a committee. They visited all the West African states, and they saw that yes, there was the need to do something about it. And so that culminated in the 50% benchmark reduction on goods, and then 30% on vehicles. And I think it was welcome news. Yeah. And also we had the paperless. Yes, the paperless, which was also introduced to reduce this sort of human interface, because
and influence
yes, and influence corruption, because there was an opinion that human interface was bringing a lot of corruption, because if you put your paper before somebody, you have to stretch your stretch your arms before the person could work on it. So when the paperless was introduced, it was a good news, and it is also facilitated clearance of goods. And also we could also say something about the policy rate of Bank of Ghana, because it kept on dwindling. It kept on dwindling over the years, even though the banks were not,
the average lending rate was not coming down.
Yes, the lending rate was not coming down, because the banks were always, coming in with a risk factor. But we don't share, that idea, because before you lend money to somebody, you must also do your due, diligence, and know that the person is credit worthy. Yes, before you give your money or you lend your money to that person. So if you always keep on, commenting on the risk factor, and because of that, they don't want to, keep to the lowering rate of the policy, yes, then I think it's not a good news. So overall, if you sum it up, you see that last year wasn't a bad year until the advent of this COVID, and then the whole thing,
everything
just went down. But we think with the measures that the government, introduced to try as much as possible to curb this COVID, everybody is kind of attest to the fact that it really, yielded results. So we are praying that when we enter next year, 2021, businesses will bounce back again, so that we take it from there. But in totality, we all know that 2020 has not been a good year, and it has impacted negatively. This COVID has impacted negatively on businesses.
I mean, we normally visit Abuzukai a lot, to interview him and check the temperature of the place. And now, in terms of maybe how has revenue been affected? I know for STC, for example, yesterday the CEO Nana Kumia mentioned that because the borders were closed, they were not able to move out, thereby losing about 50% of their revenue every single month. Now, for you, what was the hit on revenue? I mean,
in fact, somebody who can make sales of maybe 1,000 cedis a day could now just make maybe about 200 or 300 Ghana cedis.
Wow.
You see, the reason why I'm even saying that the COVID has affected us negatively is that a lot of our people, do what we call consolidation. And consolidation means you have to travel over there. About 70% of our people who do business, not in Abosokai alone, if you go to Okanshi, Makola, Tamale, everywhere, most of our people do consolidation. And consolidation means they travel over there.
To China,
to Dubai, Korea, the UK, everywhere, and make their purchases from shop to shop. They make their purchases from shop to shop, and then gather all their goods, and then give it to a freight forwarder for the person to also ship it to Ghana here. And with the advent of this COVID, we all know that there were restrictions on travel, and therefore nobody could travel.
Yeah.
And if you can't travel and your goods is running out, how do you replenish them? So you just go and sit there, and then you don't sell anything at all.
From 1,000 to 200 is quite
yes,
a bit.
Yes.
So we're all in agreement that 2020 has been horrible. We can't wait for 2021. And to start us off, obviously we're in an election year. Parliament would dissolve or adjourn on November 6th, and then the next time they will be sitting, it will be somewhere around January 6th to 7th to either introduce the 8th Parliament of the Fourth Republic and also a new president, or even like the current one. So government is in trying not to ensure that the government's machinery does not grind to a halt. Do the advanced budgets to more or less take care of the recurrent expenditure. And funny enough, the expenditure we are looking at are more or less like the top 3 items, I think, on our expenditure list. Interest payments, which we can't postpone, compensation, as well as goods and services, I guess, and maybe some other statutory payments. But for those watching at home, Dr. Idris, can you explain to us what the advanced budget is and what essentially it seeks to do? The difference between that and the main budget?
Well, essentially that is to take care of the first 3 months. Usually, at the year after elections, the first 3 months is tagged as the transition period. So a similar thing was done in 2016 by Honorable Setekwe. And I think this administration is doing a similar one. The idea is to, like you said, to keep government machinery running in the first 3 months. Remember that whoever wins this election, if NPP wins, because they're already in government, it will be much easier for them. But in case NDC wins, there will be a changeover. They have to, President Mama will have to then nominate, go through vetting. It will take months. We saw what happened when NPP won in 2016. So go for vetting and all that. So within that period, a lot of things happen, and the government machinery must run. Salaries must be paid, interest must be paid. The transfers to government agencies, goods and services must be bought. So it's just to keep the machinery running. If after the transition, then the government, whoever wins, will then bring a substantive budget for the remaining 3 quarters. So this one, I don't think that we should expect much from this first quarter budget that will be presented today. And in my view, as has been witnessed over the years since 1992, most of the budgets are drawn out of the party's manifestos. We saw that with President Rawlings, then President Kufuor, then President Mills, and then President Mahama, then President Kufuor. We've seen that. So if you do not know what to expect in the budget, just look at the manifesto. Look at the NPP manifesto. Because they are in power, of course, they will draw the budget out of their manifesto. And if you take a critical look at their manifesto, and I was telling a friend that I like NPP, their consistency. They've been very consistent with whatever they want to do. From whether you criticize them or not, they will do it. From 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020 budget, you see the trend. You see the shape. You see the content of the budget, the same. And so I expect, first of all, the minister, as he has been doing, to paint the quote-unquote gloomy picture of the kind of economy they inherited. That one, you cannot go without that. From 2017 budget is there, 2018 it is there, 2019, 2020, even 2020 mid-year budget is still there.
Advanced
in their manifesto, in their manifesto is there. So the opening remarks is to let him, he wants to let Ghanaians know the kind of environment, economic environment, socio-economic environment that they inherited. Of course, it will be, he will tag it as gloomy. And then he will move on to talk about how they transform the economy from 2017 up to 2019, how things were growing, how the economy was growing at an average of 7%, how inflation was in single digit, and how unemployment rate had declined from 11.9% to 7.9%, and how the fiscal deficit had declined from about 8% to 4.7%. So this picture. And then we hit 2020, then COVID. Of course, you tell us the impact of COVID, the businesses that have been affected, how government's fiscal position has been affected, and then the borrowings, and then the mitigation measures. This budget, I expect this budget to be presented today to tell Ghanaians how far government has gone with the mitigation measures of COVID. The COVID brought hardships on us. Government went to borrow $1 billion from IMF, borrowed from Ghana, Bank of Ghana, borrowed from other agencies, took the $230 million from the Heritage Fund. So there's the need for the minister to account for all these monies borrowed. Tell us, because you borrowed it for the mitigation, the COVID mitigation measures. And now we are almost close to the end of the year. So I think it's a nice opportunity, in order for, not for anybody to criticize the government, I think it's a nice opportunity for the Minister of Finance to tell us what they use the money for, how far they've gone with the expenditure, and the impact. Because it's not enough to spend. You should tell us the impact. Remember the 600, which was increased to 700 million support for the SMEs. Remember the 2 billion support for large enterprises. All these expenditure. I think there is a nice opportunity for the finance minister to tell Ghanaians, let us know how far they've gone with the expenditure and the impact so far. And I think moving forward, of course, let me also not forget the consumption. There are three main agents, economic agents. The individual, the household, like you and myself and our brother. Then businesses, like his business, like Citi TV. We call it investment expenditure. Then we have the government expenditure. So the COVID affected these three economic agents. Government brought what they call stimulus package to support these three economic agents. The support for the household, for the individual, remember, the free water, the free electricity, and what again, the free food they were sharing. So that was the support, and they must account for it. And we see the impact, how relief it has been to Ghanaians. Then the investment expenditure, the support for the business, they said 700 million, the 2 billion for large enterprises.
3 billion for large businesses.
Exactly. And then also the government expenditure on health, the health personnel, you remember
increasing
that 50% or their basic salary, and etc., etc. Then expenditure, health expenditure, building isolation centers, building, other things. So, and also the government going to borrow to spend. In times of economic slowdown, governments are encouraged to spend. This is economic literature. That's what the literature says. In times of economic slowdown, government must borrow and spend.
But then what they spend on is critical.
It's critical. I mean, last year you interviewed me, and I'll be the first person to criticize government about borrowing. But this year when you interview me, I will not say so, because the times have changed. And one day, my professor told me that the economic question is the same, but the answer is different depending on the times. So somebody will say, but the government said they will move from taxation to production, they will abolish taxes. Why are they introducing taxes? The times have changed. You abolish the taxes when your GDP growth rate is going down. You introduce new taxes when you know that you've grown to a certain level and you can raise revenue from it. So depending on the time, I think that we cannot criticize the government so much about the borrowing. This is the time. But which economy is not in difficulties now? Name one. Name any economy which is not in difficulty now. COVID-19 has crippled every single economy in the world. So we cannot isolate Ghana and say Ghana is not performing well. We cannot do that kind of analysis. So we should be circumspect in terms of analyzing the economic performance within the context of COVID. Within the context of COVID, it's sometimes difficult to criticize government about the budget deficit, about the inflation figures, and about the borrowing, which is expected in economic times, like difficult economic times like this. So that the other one that I think that the minister would touch on is the the COVID alleviation and revitalization of enterprises program, which they call the Ghana Cares.
Yeah.
That he made mention of that in the mid-year budget, and I think that we are still on course. Government is still on course. We have not finished, so I'm sure it will continue to
we'll get some updates.
Yes, you get updates and how far we have come and what is needed. The funds he mentioned 100 billion. How much have we gotten? How much has government contributed? How much have we gotten from the private sector? And then for the next 3 months, what are we going to do? So the concentration for the next 3 months, the first 3 months of 2021 will be about that revitalization, revamping the economy after COVID. We know that the COVID hasn't left us, but at least now we can manage it. We have been able to come out. I'm sure in March, if you had called me, I wouldn't come because it will be under lockdown. So now we can, it hasn't left us, but we can manage. So the 2021, this budget will be about just how to revamp the economy after COVID and how to do that. The other part in their manifesto, which they call consolidating the gains and also accelerating growth, we haven't gotten there yet. I'm not sure this budget will touch on that because the economy is still crippling. We are still down there. We haven't gotten to the point where we're talking about consolidating gains. In fact, what is a gain to consolidate? You know, when your budget deficit is almost 11.4. So I'm not sure we can be talking about that aspect of consolidation and accelerating economic growth. No, maybe the substantive budget can touch on that. But for this budget, for the first 3 months, on the COVID, the impact, the mitigation measures, and also the revitalization, how government has been able to source money to revamp, to help the large enterprises, the small enterprises, to help household consumption, free water, free electricity, and all that, how all these have helped. I think that this is what the minister should put across. And then also the projections for the year. Yeah. You mentioned that we expected to end the year with a GDP growth of 0.9%. Yeah. And I've mentioned that we can do better than that. I think that Bank of Ghana has also reiterated the point that we can do better because we are largely informal sector. And so when you have lifted the lockdown and then the restrictions are eased, now we can have funeral services, church services are going on. But we could not do that. Remember, during the Easter, the whole Easter, there was no kowo, and everybody was
the value that could have been generated.
Exactly. And then the adverts on your TV stations and all that, and the billboards, Easter billboards. Our prophets and
advertising agencies would make their money.
Exactly. So we lost all the revenues there. But I think there was a time you interviewed me. I mentioned that. Every election year, it is perceived that government overspends, and that affects the economy negatively. In this time, I think that whatever expenditure that is going to happen, we're going to have, if we spend it productively, it will rather revamp the economy. We are not going to see the negative effects of election expenditure or government expenditure in election years as we have seen in the previous time, because in the previous times, quote unquote, maybe the economy was running smoothly, we were in equilibrium, and therefore when you overspend, when your aggregate demand goes beyond aggregate supply, you are causing inflation. But here, this time, COVID has disrupted the economic activities. Aggregate demand has fallen short of aggregate supply. We call the demand shock. So government expenditure will rather raise the aggregate demand. That is why it is imperative for government to borrow and spend, to raise the aggregate demand to bring us back to equilibrium. So
to ensure that the economy does not slide. I mean, he has to more or less intervene in the economy too.
Exactly. So the key word here is to spend on productive sectors or productive ventures. Whoever advises the government not to spend is rather doing us bad. The person is not advising the government very well. No economist at this time would advise government to cut down expenditure. No economist. Anybody giving this expenditure doesn't understand what we call equilibrium, general equilibrium in economics. So government must spend. This is the time to spend. We have seen examples in 1929 Great Depression. We have seen examples in 2008 financial crisis. Governments borrowed and spent. Government of Ghana must borrow and spend. But the key word here is efficient use of the borrowed funds. Yeah. Not to, because we say you should borrow and spend, you should just get the money and spend it anyhow. When the money is spent on productive expenditure, especially on items that are locally produced. Items that are locally produced. So for example, if government is borrowed to buy this furniture, and this furniture is imported from China, the 1 million will go to China. But if it's locally produced, the 1 million will stay here and stimulate. Our brother was talking about the profit. Now, in economics, we say that the income is equal to expenditure. So my expenditure is equal to my brother's income. If I go to Abosokan to buy my windscreen or something, it's my expenditure, say 1,000 cedis. It becomes my brother's income of 1,000 cedis. So when people are not spending, people do not have enough to spend, it will affect the businesses. And that's why they are not getting their revenue. And my brother too, maybe because he's not getting his revenue, he will not be able to go to sports stadium to watch football match or something, or pay for his DSTV or whatever. That will also be a reduction in his expenditure and a reduction in the income of Citi TV. Yeah. So this is how the economy runs. And therefore, when we advise government to spend, they should spend judiciously and spend on locally produced items. With this kind of expenditure and with this kind of trajectory, I think that the economy will revive.
Great. Accountability on funds procured and spending wisely on items that would boost productivity, essentially. Now, Mr. Boateng, for yourself, we were talking earlier about the fact that this is not the main budget and all of that, but you should still have some, expectations when it comes to, the advanced budget expenditure and maybe revenue generation, strategies of government in the first 3 months of 2021.
Yeah. Well, in this time of this COVID that has affected almost the entire world's economy, which Ghana is no exception. It's really affected with those that are in the business community, because we all know that we do have supply credit from our business partners overseas. Yes, and because of this COVID, which has also affected them, they are not in a position to offer those credit lines to us again. And that is the more reason why we are looking at the government to try as much as possible to support businesses. And we could all testify that all over the world, governments are trying as much as possible to support their businesses. Yes, that.
So which the current government is doing. For some
the current government is doing, and we know that government has come out with this stimulus package. And initially, when they came out with this stimulus package, the estimation that they had was to just cover 200,000 people, and we could all realize that the executive director came out with the number of people who have applied for this stimulus package in the excess of 800,000 people. And the money that they had, initially they had 600 million Ghana cedis, and I think some banks also supported with 400
to a billion.
To a billion. And so if 800,000 people are going to share 1 billion Ghana cedis, you could imagine how much everybody is going to receive. And this money that they were going to share, they had categories. They had categories that they were going to use in sharing that money. They had those people that belong to the macro and then the micro. Yeah. Yes, and the macro people were those who had their money through mobile money. Yes, those people receive between 200 to 2,000 Ghana cedis, and we those that are in the micro who belong to the small and medium scale
enterprises.
Yes, enterprises. Will be getting between 3,000 to I think 400,000 thereabouts. Yes, but currently, if I want to talk for my people in Abosokai, the highest that everybody has gotten currently is just 10,000 Ghana cedis. Yes, 10,000 Ghana cedis. And
that's a ceiling.
Yes, that's the ceiling. It's between 3,000 to 10,000 Ghana cedis. And if you look at the business that we do in Abosokai, 10,000 cedis will not even give you up to 2,000 dollars. Yes, and if I want to import a container, even 20-footer container of engines, I need about $50,000 to do that importation. So what we currently, expect within this short
advanced budget
that the Minister of Finance is going to come out with is to see if he could still talk about some cheaper credits for us. And then when the president even visited us yesterday, the president came to us yesterday. Yes, I told the president that that is the area we are looking for because governments all over the world have come out with bailout for the business community. Yeah, so we should also, even though they've come out with some package, but we think that package is still not enough. Yes, so they should try as much as possible to come out with something better, and that is the more reason why I agree with Doc that whoever criticizes the government for spending in this period that we are is not doing the right thing, because government is supposed to spend, and Ghana is no exception. All over the world, governments are spending, because when the COVID comes down and everything comes to normal, definitely whatever money that they have injected or they have spent, they will be able to recuperate it. So I don't see the reason why they should criticize government for spending. So our main expectation from this short budget
reading
coming from the finance minister, our expectation is that they should come out with some package that will go to help businesses.
Now, I mean, other industries have been complaining about the fact that they still need support to be able to come out of the quagmire that COVID-19 has created. The one industry is the hospitality industry. A lot of the hotels have been complaining that even the monies that are being dispensed by NBSSI has not got into a lot of them. And we've been speaking to some of them to get their expectations for this morning's budget reading. Let's take a look at that.
The tourism industry is one of the hard hit by the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is believed to have lost millions of dollars since the virus struck, leading to significant job losses after the closure of a number of businesses.
They talked about the unemployment insurance scheme. And it's of interest to us because I'm sure aware that a lot of our members, or let me say the workers of hotels, a lot of them lost their jobs during the heat of the pandemic. So when he mentioned it in the media review, it was welcome news. But what we haven't seen is the exact nature of the implementation. So we'd want to see it in the 2021 budget.
The association also hopes government will pay special attention to the sector in its support to businesses on the path of recovery.
Unfortunately, the NBSSI 600 million did not serve the purpose for the hotel. And I'm sure a lot of the small and medium scale operators have not or will not receive significant disbursement from that fund. It looks like the NBSSI fund was more for the micro scale enterprises. Okay, so we want a situation where government will allocate some money which these medium and small scale enterprises like the hotels will be able to access. I mean, if you give 5,000 or even 10,000 seats to a hotel, it wouldn't be able to do much.
So we had a representative of the Hoteliers Association essentially making the call that the Vice President of GhBudget has been making on the show for support to revive their operations. Now, before we went, you were speaking about expenditure and the need for government to spend on the right things, which would, in the short to medium term, improve productivity so that the economy gets back on track. Now, I remember that for the main budget presentation for 2020, which he did in November, he had an expenditure target of 85.9 billion. Then he in the media budget review, he went back and asked that the expenditure should be increased to 97.7 thereabout, calling for, I think, an 11.8 billion, support. Now, do you feel that they've spent on the right things? Because some people are saying most of the things we are spending on are consumption. Like you're saying, there's electricity, there's free water. They're not spending on critical areas. From where you sit, do you feel that the monies that he requested for are being applied, and would they generate the needed returns down the line?
Okay, so I stated in my earlier submission that it's a nice opportunity for the Finance Minister to account for all the monies collected and the areas they've spent, how much has been spent, what is the impact. When people criticize governments for over-concentration on recurrent expenditure, consumption expenditure, the key word here is over-concentration. But you cannot say the government should not pay salaries. You cannot say the government should not, pay interest. You cannot say, you cannot disregard electricity. You cannot disregard water. This is all for human development. The United Nations Human Development Index does not only use income, or what we call GDP. They have three items, three variables: GDP, or the income, national income, health, and education. So if government is spending on health, if government is spending on education, it is a micro level analysis. So it is important that it depends on how you classify it. So let's take free SHS, for example. Government is spending almost 3 billion cedis on that this year. Are you going to classify it as a human capital expenditure and therefore you put it under capital expenditure, or you're going to classify it as a recurrent expenditure and therefore put it under consumption expenditure? It depends on who is looking at it. Are you going to say that because the roads are not built, children should not go to school? And I think that many people, when they are doing this discussion, they should be careful, and let's talk about the mix. I will not support the 100% concentration on one with a neglect of the other, or sacrificing one for the other. I think that a good mix of recurrent expenditure and capital expenditure is important for economic growth. We should not live in the illusion that once you spend on health, education, water, electricity, then you are collapsing the economy. We should not live in that illusion. In any case, when you visit the Ghana Statistical Service website right now, maybe viewers can go there. If you go to the website right now, take a look at the distribution of our GDP. You know, Ghana, we use the expenditure approach to calculate our GDP. And I mentioned to you that we have 3 economic agents plus the net export. So 4 components go into the calculation of GDP: consumption expenditure, investment expenditure, government expenditure, and net exports. Consumption expenditure, which many people are criticizing, account for more than 65% of GDP. So if government is supporting 65% of GDP, why is it a waste? I don't see why some people criticize government for, some of these critical interventions. In any case, we are talking about COVID crisis. We are talking about pandemic. So for example, if you are sick and somebody says, take this medicine or eat this good food, will you tell the person that I have not finished building my house, so I'm going to keep the money for my house? What if you die? So when government is spending on critical issues or recurrent expenditure or consumption expenditure, it is important, especially in COVID time. You go to other economies, they are doing direct cash transfer. $1,000, you are there, it hits your account. If government of Ghana decides to attempt to do that, there will be chaos in the country. So what do? They would rather, as they have decided, or as they decided, to subsidize electricity, because almost every Ghanaian uses electricity.
Yeah.
They would rather subsidize water, because almost every Ghanaian, not almost, every Ghanaian uses water. You can question, you can raise concerns about some people use well, they don't. That is a different matter.
Yeah.
I am saying that government intervention is critical in this time. And whether it is recurrent or capital expenditure, they are all important. In fact, in an economic crisis like this, the recurrent expenditure is more important than the capital expenditure.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Yes, in economic crisis like this, the recurrent expenditure is more important than the capital expenditure. Are you waiting for people to die? Look at how government and other NGOs shared food to our friends, the vulnerable. Assuming the government had not intervened or the private sector had not intervened to share food, would have lost all these people through hunger. Are you going to complain about the road not fixed or the person who died? Are you going to talk about somebody who works in the hotel has been laid off? This person had to find money to pay his bills. Government is saying that, no, we are going to pay your electricity and your water bills for you. This person is relieved. The person has, the little he has, is able to buy food to spend, to eat and live. Are you going to criticize the government for helping this person to survive than fixing the road? So individuals and businesses were dying because of the pandemic. Government intervenes to save both lives and enterprises, human lives, and then the life of enterprises. I am not sure somebody can criticize government for saving lives, or in the name of saying government is spending on consumption expenditure. So where should the government spend?
So for you, I mean, it should be a balance.
Let's have the balance. We should not live in the illusion that once government spends on consumption expenditure, it is a bad thing. It is not a bad thing. Okay. You are saving lives, lives of human beings and lives of enterprises. Why is it bad? When America is sharing $1,000, do you criticize the government? So, you see, that's why I told you that my professor reminded me that the economic question is the same, but the answer is different depending on the time. Before 2020, if you had asked me this question, I would have said, yes, we should criticize the government for giving free water and free electricity. For what? If government had done this in 2019, I would have been the first person to criticize him. For what purpose? Now, in pandemic, we are all dying. Government intervenes to save us, and you are criticizing the government for spending on consumption expenditure. Okay. Meanwhile, that is what is needed for survival. We are talking about survival. And I gave you an analogy that if you are sick and you have just 100 cedis, will you use the 100 cedis to buy medicine and food to survive, or use it to buy cement for your house? Which one will you choose?
Obviously, that's
exactly.
First.
So why are you criticizing government for spending on consumption? This free water, free electricity, they are not freebies as people describe it. Because if you go to the dictionary, freebies may sound more like a funny thing. These are life-saving interventions. Essentials. Not freebies. Yes, I will not call them freebies. Life-saving interventions, essential, very essential. I don't see why many countries are doing that, and then we live in Ghana and we criticize our government for doing something that many countries are doing. Meanwhile, we are all fighting a single enemy, the pandemic. So why are you isolating government, Ghana government, to say they are spending on consumption expenditure? And I've mentioned to you that the consumption expenditure component accounts for more than 65% of our GDP. So where should the spending go? Government is saving 65% of GDP. And that is why Bank of Ghana, and I think I also have the belief that the GDP will do better because the greater component is being saved. So I feel that I think Ghanaians we should try to understand the timing. The timing is key. Where and when and who to get what has been spent is very important.
Okay.
I heard somebody say government revenue has declined, so we should cut expenditure. I would never ever advise government to cut down expenditure. Never.
Okay.
Because we are in economic crisis.
Okay, so can I say something?
Yes.
Now, he mentioned that $1,000 has been shared. I'm sure if you got $1,000, you'll be very happy. I mean, every month. But we are getting free electricity, free, water. I'm sure you are enjoying that. Now, the question is, when does it end? Is it going to end at the end of the year, or are we to expect that in the advanced budget, government might, go ahead and possibly extend this? And if they do that, I mean, I'm just saying, what would be your reaction, or do you expect that from January to March, the free water, free electricity, should be extended? Because, like you said, the economy looks like it's
data will inform us, and I'm very happy that the government, and I think Citi TV, you have been speaking to the data a lot. And I like another. I follow your discussion, even the voters' diary. Yeah. We must be informed by data. Ghana's Statistical Service is in charge of data generation. So they should be able to inform government. Remember that they did a survey and they told us the number of businesses that have collapsed, individuals that have lost their jobs. If by January 2021, we have a smaller number who have lost their jobs or things are improving, then there will be no need for that free water and free electricity and on any other intervention. But I feel that it will take us some time, maybe the next 6 months, to come back to normal levels. Even our brother can attest to it. For your business to revive to the normal levels, I'm not sure that we are talking about end of December 2020. We may be talking about talking about by June 2021 or end of the year 2021. So we should give ourselves 6 to 12 months before we can come back to normal life. Normal life. Like you can go about your businesses, go and make your sales of 10,000, your thousands, or your hundreds. And so, if the data by the end of the year, if the data suggests that government intervention is so critical, you use the word essential, which is very good. If by the end of the year, the government intervention, like what they have done already, is still essential, then we would advise the government to continue with the provision of free water, free electricity, and support for business and all that. But if by the end of the year, we think that the lockdown has been lifted, the restrictions has been eased, and therefore we are almost back to normal levels, then there will be no need for that. And then I advise the government should shift the resources from those electricity and water, then bring it to maybe health, education. They have this Agenda 111, and I'm sure the 2021, the budget that we are talking about today, it will address that. I'm sure it will address some part of that.
No, I saw him nodding when you were talking about the fact that the interventions could be extended all the way to middle of the year next year.
Depending on the data.
Depending on the data. I'm surprised because I was thinking that, like the Bank of Ghana governor is saying, it appears we would grow at a faster pace than is being projected by the IMF. You're also optimistic.
But remember, we are talking about just the first quarter of 2021, not the whole year of 2021.
Yes.
So this first quarter, I think that it will still have the interventions.
You agree?
Yes, I agree. And to a large extent also, I think it must also be based on the number of active cases that we may, have.
Still.
Yes, that we may have when we enter the year 2021. We all know that the cases keeps on going down. So if by the first quarter of 2020 we still have a very limited active cases, I think even if we wouldn't enjoy 100% free of. I think currently we are enjoying water 100%, and then electricity 50%.
Yes.
At that time,
they could
yes,
reduce it.
they could reduce it to maybe 50-50, and I think it should be okay, because even though we are all praying that 2020 COVID should, go down, and the business should start, picking up. We don't expect it to be an overnight situation. It will be on a gradual process. Yeah. So I still share with Doc that even if we still enjoy it, yes, first quarter of the year, I think it will be okay for us.
Yeah, or 50-50.
Or 50-50.
Yeah. We can talk about revenue generation.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Anytime you hear budget, people start to think about taxes. I do not expect any new taxes.
I'll actually coming. Okay, let's finish this. So, another group of I think organizations that will be happy with an extension of the lifeline, should I say, measures, electricity, free water, will be, I think, the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, because they, when we spoke to them, say they are hopeful that, as you've all been saying, interventions to help small-scale businesses thrive.
Yes.
So let's take a look at that discussion we had. The report we have on that.
With the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta set to deliver the budget for the first quarter of 2021 on Wednesday, October 28th, different constituents of the Ghanaian society have different expectations. The presentation, known as the Expenditure in Advance of Appropriation, is normally read in election years to ensure the smooth running of government for the first quarter of the year after an election. One of the groups looking forward to the budget is the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The chamber says it does not expect any pronouncements increasing existing taxes or introducing new ones. The chamber is rather upbeat about a possible reduction in taxes to help MSMEs find their feet from the impact of COVID-19. Mark Bedu Abuaji is the CEO of the chamber.
Basically, we are not expecting a budget that will either increase existing taxes or that will introduce new taxes, because it's the time that we need to help businesses come out with policies that will stimulate the activities of the private sector, more especially the SMEs. So any new taxes will be detrimental to businesses and to the private sector. We're also looking at a budget that will also look at how they can support SMEs. We know the stimulus package, but I think some of our members and some businesses have still not received the stimulus package. So the 2021 budget for the first quarter basically should look at how they can create more conducive environment for businesses by providing all the necessary support that businesses will need to be able to come out of the difficulties that we are facing that is being brought about by the COVID-19.
Mr. Bedu Abuaji is also asking government to put words into action by establishing the SME-focused bank it promised in the previous budget.
Well, in the last budget and the mid-year review, the Minister of Finance promised us of establishing a development bank to provide medium to long-term funding to businesses. For us, if there is a time that we need that bank, it's now. So in the 2021 budget, we're expecting that the minister will make a very definite statement on the establishment of that bank and how that bank is going to help businesses.
Right, so there you had the man, a representative of the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry, essentially saying they're not expecting any hikes in the current taxes or even the introduction of new taxes. Now, that brings us to the other side of the budget, even though we know that he's coming to ask for money to take care of recurrent expenditure for the first quarter. The question is, if you're spending, well, how much money are we bringing in, which then moves us to revenue.
Yeah.
What are you expecting when it comes to revenue for the advanced budget? Any overhauls, any introduction of some taxes? Or?
Well, okay, so you look at the budget, revenue and expenditure, and we have been getting more than 80% of our revenue from taxes, especially when we attain middle income status as a country. The support from foreign donors is now averaging 1 billion cedis, not that much. So we have to do a lot in our domestic revenue mobilization, which is key. Again, we are in COVID. When we are discussing these things, you have to put it into proper context. When you are talking about COVID, let me take you to level 200 classroom. The tax multiplier is negative. Every level 200 economic students knows that. Why is it negative? It's negative because it takes away from GDP. Okay, but then if it is negative, why do governments introduce taxes? Revenue. Government expenditure multiplier is positive. So you take the taxes with the hope that you spend it wisely and that your expenditure multiplier, positive one, will outweigh the negative tax multiplier. So in times of difficulties, there's something we call fiscal and monetary policy. Now, the fiscal issue is handled by Minister of Finance. How do you grow your GDP? Do you embark on expansionary fiscal policy or contractionary fiscal policy? In times like this, government embarks on expansionary fiscal policies and also expansionary monetary policy done by Bank of Ghana. What is expansionary fiscal policy? The expansionary fiscal policy needed to revive an economy in times of difficulties like this is to spend, increase government expenditure, and or reduce taxes. So given this background, why would any finance minister talk about introducing new taxes when you are the same person talking about expanding your fiscals? So I would not expect any introduction of new taxes. It will be economically suicidal. And even politically suicidal to do this now in this political environment, in this COVID environment economically, and in this political environment election period.
Election about 5 weeks
It will be
away.
both economically and politically suicidal to introduce new taxes. It will not help the economy. It will not help politics. So I am not sure. If anything at all, whatever existing tax levels, tax rate we have should be maintained or reduced. We've been talking about the support for individuals and businesses. Let me talk about the individuals. There's something we call disposable income. When you work at Citi TV, assuming you are paid 1,000, the income tax is say 100. Your disposable income is 900. Okay? And as we have seen in many countries during this COVID time, they have reduced or removed their personal income tax. So government of Ghana may say, Bobie, that 100 cedis personal income tax you pay, I am forgiving you. Use it to spend. So your disposable income has moved from 900 to 1,000. So remember that 100 is a tax. So government could have collected it, but because of economic difficulties, government will say, I want to help my people. And every country is doing it. So they reduce the rate or they remove it at all for the individual to have the maximum disposable income to spend. So that could be touched. I'm talking about reduction, I'm not talking about the increment. So either maintain or reduce. Secondly, the tax, the corporate taxes, the other profit taxes, all the other taxes we get from the firms and companies, that too could be maintained or reduced at worst. At worst maintained, at best reduced. No introduction, no increment. Because how can you allocate 700 million for small and medium enterprises and 2 billion for large enterprises at the same time come and introduce new taxes? It doesn't work that way. It would not make economic sense to do that. So I feel that the minister should just leave it. Or if he really wants to help us, reduce it. I have seen that in their manifestos. And it is something that is good. And I think on the day we were discussing the manifestos, I mentioned that I think we should be careful about these tax exemptions and tax holidays and all that, because the tax exemptions alone, currently as you speak, can finance the free SHS, the tax exemptions alone. So if you're talking about tax exemptions and rebates and all that, we should be careful. In economic crisis like this, yes, it's important. But when we have moved to a certain, we have recovered, there's no need for those interventions. So now there's the need for the interventions. I have seen in the MPP manifesto, interventions. I have seen these tax exemptions also in the NDC manifesto, which is commendable. But I just want to submit to them that when we have recovered, they should not be talking about exemptions again. So when you cannot talk about exemptions, tax exemptions, and be talking about increasing tax rates or introducing new taxes at the same time, it will not be correct to do that.
Right. Now, I mean, when we walk through the streets of Abusukai, I mean, your boys there, I know usually they've praised governments in the past for, the reduction, 50% reduction in benchmark rates, for example. Times when taxes have been, increased, they've, obviously expressed their displeasure. What would be the reaction, I mean, if indeed some taxes are introduced that might affect you at the end of the day? Because, I mean, just to say this, the 2020 total revenue and grants target was 67 billion plus. Then it got revised to 53 billion. Obviously, we are struggling when it comes to revenue. So something needs to be done.
Yeah, before I come that, I want to reiterate about what Doc said regarding the tax exemptions. This is an issue that GhBudget has.
I know you're very passionate about
that. We have raised time over and over again whenever there is going to be a budget reading or a budget review. Because if we look at people that are giving tax exemptions regarding clearance of goods at the port, if you look at the revenue that government is losing in that direction, it's a very huge revenue. So we have always recommended to government to take a second look at that aspect, because Doc rightly said, if you look at the money that we are losing on these tax exemptions, it can even take care of the free SHs. So it's good that government must, take a second look at that tax exemptions. And we have also been recommending to government, to try as much as possible to widen the tax net, especially if you come to the informal sector, like in my area. I have registered for VAT. The next shop to me has not registered. And we all know that VAT is a consumption task. So if I'm selling this at maybe 10 cedis and I put 3% VAT on it, it comes to 13 cedis, isn't it? Yeah. But if you go to the next shop, which is not registered, that person is selling his own at 10 cedis. So therefore, the customer will will go there and then buy, and buy from there. So we have, of all the engagements that we've had with GRA, we've always been telling them that they should try as much as possible to register everybody in the informal sector, so that if everybody is contributing something small, government can, raise enough revenue. And also, one thing that we've always been talking about is that it looks as if government has not taken a look at people who do business in the night.
Okay.
Yes. Go to
La Paz.
Yes. Go to Osu, go to La Paz, go to Dansoman.
There's a whole economy.
There's a whole economy. go to Medina.
Economy on the beach.
Yes. In the night, people are doing brisk business. So I was thinking, with the advent of this NAPCO, they could use, those guys at least to go around in the night to try as much as possible to rake in some money. Yeah. Yes, and then it will definitely add to the revenue of government. Yeah. You see, but in terms of coming out with new taxes, like Doc said at this time, my brother, it will be in a political, suicide for.
Let me tell you something about the domestic revenue growth rate. It was as high as 50% in the year 2011 because of the oil. Then fell to 20%, in I think 2009, 10, no, 2011 was 50, then it fell to 20%, then increased to 23% in 2014. Then that's where I think MPP talked about this nuisance taxes. The Laffer curve, we got to 23% in the year 2014 and it started dropping. And I think the minister at that time kept introducing new taxes and the curve kept also declining. So this is the sense behind nuisance taxes. When you introduce new taxes and the rate at which your revenue increases is not going, the growth rate is declining, you have to stop. And the government at that time did not stop.
Okay.
So the curve kept declining from 23% in the year 2014 to as low as 10.9%, so let's say 11% in 2016. Then this administration came, they abolished what they call the nuisance taxes, and the curve started rising. Currently, we are doing 15%. It has increased from 10.9, 11% to 15.7%. So we should still rise to about 20%. Now, how do we rise to that level? So I am discussing this as a general thing, not within the COVID time, as a general economic performance. I think this country should do well to raise our domestic revenue growth rate to about 20%. 2023, if you can hit 25%, it will be good for us. As a ratio of GDP, usually I'm a bit skeptical when I'm using the ratio of GDP because of the rebasing. Because it used to be about 16, 17%. We rebase, then it goes to 13%. And somebody says we are doing poorly. We are not doing poorly. You just rebase. And you see, this is the analogy. It's a ratio, A over B, fraction. You are saying that the GDP has gone up. Therefore, the tax GDP ratio has fallen. And you have told Ghanaians that about 88% of what went into the rebased GDP were from oil and gas. Then we should have gotten about 80% revenue from oil and gas to keep the ratio constant. What am I saying? I'm saying that Ghana is not getting enough from our natural resources. If you rebase your GDP, 88% is coming from oil and gas, your ratio has fallen. I am saying that the ratio should not have fallen if we had gotten enough revenue from oil and gas to have kept the tax to GDP ratio at 16-17%, not 13% as we are talking about. So generally speaking, we are not getting enough from our natural resources. So I am recommending two things. First of all, efficiency. My brother talked about efficiency. Businesses going about who are not paying taxes, the leakages in the system, we have been talking about it. Somebody talks about the formalizing the informal sector. That will take us a long time. That's a long term.
It's been a rhetoric for years.
Now, we can do with the efficiency. Digitization has helped. He mentioned he's on the ground. So sometimes when they speak, I really listen to them. You and I, we're always in the office. We're always in the office. They're on the ground. Yeah. Somebody presents a paper. You have to sign. I have to pass some envelope to you before you sign. So if the tax is say 100 cedis, you say, my brother, why don't you pay 50? Give me the 30 and then we go our way. You see?
And the state loses.
Yeah, and the state loses. So that digitization will help reduce, it will not remove, it will reduce in the system. Government can save a lot of money from there. Then secondly, my second recommendation for domestic resource mobilization is minerals, natural resources. It's the natural resources.
Can you share some more light on that?
Yes. We know the royalties. The gold royalty is about 5%. And it's been 5% for a long time. The total revenue we get from our minerals is about 10%. Nigeria is doing 60%. Equatorial Guinea, Botswana, South Africa, mention them. Mention the countries, the middle income countries that have natural resources. How much do they get from their natural resources? Ghana is getting averagely 10%. And in fact, the impact of oil revenue on household income is 0.1%, almost negligible. So it looks like we parade ourselves and say GDP has gone up, GDP has gone up. 45 to 50% of our GDP growth rate is coming from the natural resources, the extractive sector. Yet, the extractive sector contributes to averagely 10% of our revenue. We are not getting enough from the place. We should revise the corporate taxes. We should revise the royalties. We should revise the way we sign our contracts. We should add value to. We should stop or reduce the exploitation of the primary commodities.
Doc, the 10% including gold also.
Yeah, I'm saying that all the extractive sector.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you take our revenue, the total, let's say the total revenue is 100. You take all the royalties, you add all together. Out of the 100, only 10 is coming from the extractive sector. And that is not good for us. When other countries are doing 40, 50, 60%, we cannot, and you see, the annoying part is that if you go to where they are doing the mining, they have destroyed the farm. They have destroyed our water body. Look at what Galamsey did to us.
The communities are not a reflection of the value that they are actually generating.
Exactly. The activity is destroying our environment, and we are not even getting enough from that activity to replenish.
Look, and this thing, is it due to the contracts that they have signed? Is that the reason why we are getting only 10%?
All inclusive, many factors. The contract is part. I've talked about the royalties. We should increase it, the corporate taxes. And also, we should not allow them to export everything. I know that most of the companies are even private owned. That is why, look, I'm bringing a controversial thing here, EJAPA. But let us not focus on EJAPA. Let us focus on a government state-owned enterprise that is in business like Newmont. That was the essence of the EJAPA, but because it's become political, I don't want us to talk about it. But let Ghana have an enterprise, a Ghana mineral enterprise that will mine gold like Newmont, like the other ones. That will mine oil. As for oil, the capital needed is very huge. So let's maybe concentrate on gold, diamond, and the other minerals.
Timbers.
Yes, let's have our own. There is something we call a retention law, which has not been enforced in this country. What is a retention law? If you are a private company in Ghana, usually the multinationals, once they get their profits, in fact, some people even under-declare their profits because of taxes. So if it's 100, it says it's 80, because the taxes are a percentage of the profit. So 10% of 100 is 10. So the person will say 80. So that 10% of 80 is 8. So instead of paying 10, the person pays 8. That is one problem. Now you mentioned the problem. I'm listing the problems for you. The other one, this is the retention law. When you get your profit, say 100 cedis, some countries would compel you by their laws to retain out of the 100 cedis, maybe retain 20, 30 cedis in the country. Reinvest that. Whatever you do, we don't care. As far as that money remains here, you can repatriate the rest. But is it being enforced in the country? I doubt.
I mean, are we in a position to be implementing such laws, seeing that we are trying to, the GIPC, for example, is trying to attract a lot of investment?
Yeah, right. So we always have to get the mix right. We always have to get it mixed. And that is why I am calling for a state-owned enterprise to engage in mining. And maybe can even absorb the Galamsey people, regulate the activities, and then so that we have our own state-owned enterprise.
You really want a state-owned entity, running mining, seeing the track record?
Maybe I know where you are coming from because of efficiency. I know where you are coming from because Ghana has sold most of these state-owned enterprises. But we are all in the country when we heard PDS make profit in the first 3 months. Though, again, with some of the controversies surrounding it, I don't have the facts to talk about it, but I know that they made profits because of the private sector interest. So even if it's not 100% wholly owned by the state, maybe 60-40. 60-40 is okay. 50-50 cry is okay. So let's have a state enterprise with private investment, say 60% or 40% or 50%. But at the end of the day, the profit is declared in Ghana books, not in the private sector book.
Okay.
So this is where I want to see our, and then lastly, not the least, manufacturing. Manufacturing. I once heard from a professor that Ghana has a gold refining company here in Ghana, and I was surprised. So we have such a company in Ghana. I don't know, maybe you can fact check.
Yeah.
I don't know. And we do not refine anything. We just produce and then we sell everything. We export everything in their raw state. We have been talking about this. When I studied economics in secondary school, this exportation of primary commodities, I heard of it way back in secondary school.
We are still
talking about it. But what should we talk about? Because that's the way, that's the solution. Once we have identified the solution, we will hit there. We will continue to talk about it until something changes. We cannot continue to be trumpeting middle income economy, Ghana beyond aid, etc., etc., when we do not have our own interest in the exploitation of natural resources, one, and two, when we export these commodities in their primary states. We cannot achieve all these big dreams of Ghana beyond aid and middle income status when the realities on the ground do not support our vision. We should change the course of how we do our things, then we can realize our vision as a country.
Now, you've spoken of digitization, revision of the royalties, regime, the state-owned enterprise to run businesses in the extractive sector and add value and manufacturing. Yes. Now, you spoke about the use of some of the youth, for example, part of NAPCO, to clog the loopholes when it comes to the outflow of possible revenue for government. Then the point about digitization. Some steps have been taken, some investments have been made. Now, how critical, is it that we consolidate the gains we've made when it comes to digitizing the economy, to roping the informal sector, so that we widen the tax net, as has been trumpeted?
Yeah.
As well?
Before I come to that, let me add something small to what Doc said regarding, state enterprises taking control of some of the enterprises like the extractive sector. GhBudget has always been, saying this, because if you look at the percentage of repatriation that these multinationals take away to their home country, it contributes to the depreciation
of the city.
Yeah. Because at the end of the year, they take a very huge amount in foreign exchange and then they repatriate all to their home country. So GhBudget has always been calling that at least instead of 100% repatriation, they should take some percentage. Then some percentage will also remain here, and that will will let our city grow. Because if they take all the monies away, it always have a very negative impact and contributes to the depreciation of our city. Now, coming back to this digitization, I think it's a step in the right order, and if it's implemented, correctly, it will go a long way to help the businesses, because it will that is some of the areas that this financial institution has also always been talking about, because they will lend you money and then you say, oh, my house is here, if you reach this junction, you turn left, you go right, you go this way, that is where my house is. And if they lend you money and maybe you are not repaying, they come to where your house is, they come there and you are nowhere to be found. But if you have this digital address system, they could easily trace you to your house. And now this thing is being applied everywhere. It is being applied everywhere. Now with your TIN number, they just key in your TIN number, they will know wherever you are. If you are paying your taxes or you are not paying, they will just know. Even
So I mean, no, not to catch you. We're going to go for a quick break. When we return, we'll continue the discussion on what's it called, the digitization. You know, how the city is performing and other matters. Now, if you're watching, this is our special coverage of the advanced budget presentation by the Finance Minister, which will be happening possibly in a few minutes' time. To the University of Ghana, Dr. Edu Osusakode. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll continue the discussion and possibly hear from the Finance Minister.
Close-up deep action with antibacterial mouthwash formula and deep cleaning gel. Close-up deep action. Enjoy long-lasting fresh breath.
Comprehensive news. The Citi Newsroom at 8 p.m. on Citi TV is your most engaging news bulletin on TV.
It's a very oh, that's too bad. The youth are still throwing stones. They are still throwing stones here into our direction. And can I come in? I want to come in. Okay.
Telling your stories better with correspondents covering every corner of the country.
Getting access to potable water is a daily struggle for residents of Kakichekopi and Balekopi communities in the Ada East district of the Greater Accra region.
Citi Newsroom at 8 p.m. Very fluent with issues that concern you.
This inquiry me come from Mr. Rabbi, someone is in a bread. Told you kind of a 1 week. What are you say?
Is it unfair? What all this? What all this? We are dying! We are dying! We are dying for charcoal!
With Citi Newsroom, your community is now connected.
In this our community, all of us, we are very sorry about this school. If we went to see the children, they are so small. Even my grandchildren are there. My grandsons are there. If they come out from the school, I have this.
Every day at 8 p.m., Citi Newsroom is live on Citi TV.
You're welcome to your election bureau, Citi FM and Citi TV. This is our special coverage of the Finance Minister's advanced budget presentation, which is expected to cover expenditure for, recurrent expenses for the government for the first 3 months of the year after the 2020 elections. This essentially is supposed to ensure that government's machinery runs without any issues. Now, we've been talking a lot here with economists from the University of Ghana. I think some of the key points you've made over the course of this discussion, the fact that there shouldn't be any introduction of taxes. Government necessarily needs to spend to stimulate demand, to keep the economy on track, and the general optimism about where our economy is going. Even though we've been battered by COVID, we still appear to be strong compared to other economies. But continuously, with the stories we've played, a lot of businesses still say we need support so that we'll be able to get off our knees and thrive. And one of such petroleum consumers, which says that its main concern is that they expect the government to come out with plans or implement plans to end fuel smuggling. We're talking about revenue and the need for government to actually, clog, some of the loopholes. And for them, they believe that the fuel smuggling into the country is denying government of a lot of resources. So let's take a look at this report from COPEC.
As the Minister of Finance prepares to read the budget later this week, the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, COPEC, says it expects to hear government's plans to end fuel smuggling into the country. Even though government has made some efforts to address the problem, the Chamber says the problem persists, causing the country to lose revenue. Speaking to Citi Business News, Executive Secretary of COPEC, Duncan Amoah, says it is imperative that government addresses this challenge in order to improve its revenue generation.
We have, over the period, discussed the issue of fuel smuggling. It remains one of the headaches for most people downstream, because not only is government losing revenue, but the people are also challenged, because oftentimes the fuel that is smuggled into the system do not go the approved channels for quality and quantity checks, Q&Q checks. And so we are getting bad fuel, but we are paying as much as we would probably be paying to the state if we were buying regular fuel. And then the state doesn't get the needed revenue. Then in the end, because the state is also not getting the needed revenue, the state piles on additional taxes to those already paying taxes. We are saying that the 2021 first quarter budget should have a clear plan on how to curtail the fuel smuggling syndicate and ensure that not only are a few getting rich at the expense of all of us, but the state is also deriving maximum revenue from petroleum sales within and across the country. Once that is done, it will be difficult for government to look at introducing or increasing the existing taxes. We think that the fuel smuggling syndicate must be halted forthwith immediately.
Meanwhile, some Ghanaians share their thoughts on areas of the budget they expect to be highlighted.
I think the health sector, because most of the governments, when they do come on, they do say that they've done this, they've built this hospital and that. But during this COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen that there are a lot of gaps in the health sector. So I think they should put much effort in the health sector.
Well, I expect them to do good roads. And with our water issue at Dansoman, I feel they need to do some improvement on that. I think apart from that, I want a peaceful election as well. I think people are jobless, so the government really needs to concentrate on that. I mean, get some sort of revenue for people so people don't go about begging for money. Apart from that, I think we should.
So there you heard it, Chamber of Petroleum Consumers essentially calling for efforts to be, stepped up to end fuel smuggling, so that government, gets the needed revenue it can from that space. Now, one key topical issue that has come up in the past 24 hours or so is the issue of our debt accumulation and whether or not we are now HIPIC or not. Now, if I remember, back in January, we started the year with a debt amount of 209 billion.
Yeah.
0.6. Now, fast forward 6 months down the line, or 7 to July, we ended up 263 billion, making our debt to GDP ratio 68.3. Now, IMF essentially saying that we're going to end the year at 76.7 debt to GDP ratio, beyond the threshold which people will say is sustainable. And some are saying, what, we are exhibiting the characteristics of a highly indebted, poor country. Do you expect the finance minister to, address this, in his advanced budget, seeing that it has become a topical issue?
I think it's an opportunity for him, because even before today, we've heard members of the government responding to some NDC people's assertion that the country is in HIPIC, or our economic performance is at the pre-HIPIC time, or pre-HIPIC levels. So once we've heard Honorable Minister of Information speak about it, once we've heard the Deputy Minister of Information speak about it, I think that Minister of Finance is part of government. You are coming to present the budget. Your members in opposition have told you that your performance is as worse as the pre-HIPIC times. You are presenting the budget. Ghanaians are listening to you. is the opportunity for you to let us know, paint your picture for us, media, academia, research, our brothers in the industry, to actually either ascertain the truth or the falsity of the whole thing. So I think the minister should touch on it. When we are talking about HIPIC, first of all, let's talk about the public debt. I agree with you that the debt has been rising. And when we ended the year 2009 with a debt of 218.9 billion Ghana cedis. Today we are talking about some 260 billion cedis. Without COVID, it was still a matter of concern. With COVID, government borrowed, and it was rightly so, to borrow, and of course once you borrow it, you raise your public debt. We have the external debt and the domestic debt all increasing. But it was good that the government did that. But if somebody is raising a concern about the public debt, about the indicators of assessing the public debt, there's a legitimate concern. So I think NDC has a legitimate concern that maybe they are letting the government know that your public debt is rising, and IMF has said this, and therefore you should not close your eyes to the fact. But I'm also of the view that yes, the public debt is rising, but we know why. We know what COVID has done to us, and in assessing the health or the public debt situation, I will not only use the debt to GDP figure. Now, the debt to GDP figure, it used to be, when you use the rebasing, was by 73, then rebase, and it changed to 53, 56%. Now we are talking about some 68%. So the reason why I will not use only the debt to GDP ratio is that once you rebase, the ratio looks fantastic. But indicators, that will still be pointing certain things to you. Like what? Like the debt service burden.
Like domestic revenue, you know, and how, for example, interest payments, how much of our revenue we use.
The debt service burden is equal to the interest plus amortization. Amortization is that part of principal you pay. So this year we budgeted to pay interest of 22 billion, and then the amortization about 12 billion. You add the two together, talking about some 35, 36 billion cedis. Now, as a ratio of your revenue, you're talking about some 58 to 60%. 58 to 60% of your total revenue and grants is used to service your debt. So it's a concern for many Ghanaians. I'm sure government, even the minister and the president, are not, you know, they are not living in the illusion that things are at its best. I think they are aware of the data. They know. So let's assess the public debt using the debt to GDP ratio, and also using the debt service as a ratio of your total revenue and grants, which is between 58 and 60%. When we say other countries have borrowed, America, the debt service burden on America's revenue is 10%. The debt service burden on Ghana's revenue is 58%. So we cannot only look at the debt to GDP ratio, we should look at the debt service burden on us, because it is the revenue that we are using to service our debt. Now, the other variable you look at is the components or the distribution of domestic debt and external debt. Remember that the exchange rate can affect your public debt even though you have not borrowed. So for example, we did some calculation using data from 2006 to 2019. Now realize that the exchange rate alone has added over 60 billion Ghana cedis to our public debt. The exchange rate alone, the depreciation of the cedi alone. Government has not gone to borrow any 60 billion, but the depreciation of the cedi in 14 years, between 2006 to 2019, has added over 60 billion cedis to the public debt. So we should look at the distribution of a public debt in terms of the domestic and external. Because of the effect of exchange rate, it's important to do that. Ghana, currently as we speak, the distribution is that it's 51 external, 49 domestic. Now, so because of that, we look at the distribution. So if you ask me, so which one is better? I think that if you get more of domestic and less of external is important because we do not have control over the dollar. We do not have control over the exchange rate. Okay, we have the control of the exchange rate, but we don't have control of the dollar. So we should borrow from the currency that we have control over, which is the cedi. America's total debt, I think more than 80% is coming from their domestic currency. The dollar is their domestic currency. So they have no problem. 51% of ours is from external sources, and there's a problem with that. You know, and the other one is look at your external debt. Remember that we do not print dollars here. We get the dollars from our foreign exchange. So you must compare your external debt as a ratio to the as a ratio of the exports. So look at external debt and exports. External debt and exports, we are talking about some 20%. You look at the external debt to reserves, they're talking about some 30%. So these are all the dynamics. And the other one, when you talk about the debt service burden, we must be careful about the crowding out. Why is the external debt burden on revenue a problem? It is a problem because the more you use revenue to service your debt, the less money is left for the other expenditure items, which we call the crowding out of other critical government expenditure.
Capital expenditure.
Exactly. So the debt service burden is one, and also the crowding out effect on other critical government expenditure is also another. So we should look at all these things. So in conclusion about the public debt, I would say that it's alarming. It is a concern. If anybody raises a concern about the public debt, the person has a legitimate concern to raise it because it's our economy, it's our money, and therefore if things are going in the direction that we are not happy about, we should be free to talk about it, but we should be mindful of the fact that we know the problem. We know what has caused it, and that's COVID. So if you are doing the analysis up to the end of 2019, I agree. If anybody calls me to do an analysis, I'll do up to 2019. And I'll give you another figure, another graph for the COVID period. Now, you mentioned IMF. Ghana, there are 3 ways of reporting your public debt, the whole world. Ghana has adopted the central government approach. So we report only the central government debt.
Okay.
IMF reports the general government debt. That is why, if you remember, recently there was this dispute between the figures put out by IMF and the figures put out by Ghana government. Because Ghana government has excluded state-owned enterprises debt. IMF will add to it.
What about the banking sector cleanup? I mean,
exactly.
Energy sector debt.
Exactly. IMF will add all ESLA. They will add all the $1.2 billion from road fund. IMF will add all. That is why IMF is projecting 76%. Government of Ghana, I know in this year's the budget that the minister will read today, he will not project that because we report the central government approach, and it's not as if it's mischievous. It's because they are only following the trend. That has been our practice over the years. NDC, MBP, they have all reported the central government approach of reporting your public debt. So I don't see why, because of politics, somebody will now want to change the approach and make it look worse than it used to. So the third one is when you add local government to it. Presently, as you speak, the law does not allow local governments to borrow. So assuming that maybe local government, something my municipality could borrow, then when you're talking about the third approach, we talk about the public sector debt. Then you add, it is equal to the central government plus the SOEs plus the local government borrowing. So in conclusion about that, I'm saying that Ghana reports the central government debt. IMF reports the general government debt, and there's a difference. And I think that just to clear the air, because Ghana government does not allow local governments to borrow, so we cannot even talk about the third approach. So we look at the first two. To clear the doubt, I think that the Minister of Finance should let us all understand what is the level when we are talking about the first approach and what is the level when we are talking about the second approach. Okay. So reports both the central government debt and then the general government debt. so that when we are doing analysis, we can differentiate and know that, okay, the difference is coming from the banking sector cleanup, the difference is coming from the ESLA, the difference is coming from road fund securitization, etc., etc. So that is about the public debt. The issue of HIPIC. Yesterday, Omaro interviewed me, and I made it point blank to him, or point blank, that Ghana is not in HIPIC. Our economic indicators now do not suggest that we are in HIPIC times. HIPIC is a program that you subscribe to. Ghana has not subscribed to the HIPIC program. That's number one. Number two, the program is for poor countries. Ghana is not a poor country. Ghana is a middle income country.
Some would disagree.
Number three, it is a World Bank data analysis. I know. It's a World Bank criteria. Our per capita income is over $2,000 now, and that qualifies us to be a middle income country. So first, we have not subscribed to the program. Second, it is for poor countries. Ghana is no longer a poor country. We are a middle income country. Third, the economic indicators now are not the same as we had at the time we subscribed to the HIPIC program.
In 2000?
Yes. And I have written them here. The GDP growth rates. If you want to say that COVID has impacted negatively on us, we know there is a pandemic. But we're growing averagely 7%.
We're targeting 6.8 for 2020.
Exactly. So let's use the target. Before HIPIC, it was 3.7. Almost the same levels in 2016, 3.4%. Before HIPIC, we budgeted for 6.8%. How can somebody say that 3.7% is equal to 6.8%? That is the economic growth rate. This is the real GDP growth, because those really have oil. So we can talk about the real GDP growth rate of 6.5% and 3.7%. Now the next one is the debt to GDP figure. What qualifies a country to subscribe to the HIPIC was that you must have your debt to GDP figure more than 100%. I think it's over 150 or so. At the time we subscribed, it was 182%. Today we are talking about 68% debt to GDP ratio. How can somebody say that 182% is equal to 68%? At the time Ghana subscribed to the HIPIC relief, was 54%. Today, before HIPIC, we were doing single digit, it was around 9.3%. Currently, as we speak, it is about 10.4%.
We started the first 3 months at 7 points.
Exactly. How can somebody say 54% is equal to 10.4%? What figure again? Depreciation of the cedi. Depreciation of the cedi was depreciating, where is it? Yeah, 91.5%. This is in 2001 budget. It's on Minister of Finance website. I didn't generate these figures. It's on Ghana Statistical Service website. It's on Minister of Finance budget. The budget that Minister of Finance at that time, was presented to the whole country on the floor of Parliament. It is there. The cedi was depreciating as high as 91.5%. Today, as we speak, the cedi is depreciating 2.5%. How can 91.5% be equal to 2.5%?
He's smiling because in 2018 I interviewed him, and his main concern with regards to the budget was the fact that the cedi is depreciation. But this year, from January to September, he's happy.
The debt service as a ratio of revenue. At the time Ghana subscribed to HIPIC in 2000, I'm talking about end of the year 2000. Anytime I say at the time we subscribed to HIPIC, the timing is end of the year 2000. It was the debt service as a ratio of revenue was 72%. Today, as we speak, it's about 58 to 60%. How can 72 be equal to 58 or 60%? The debt to the total debt stock as a ratio of revenue was at 933%. Today, we are talking about 486%. How can 900 be equal to 400? So clearly, if you see all these things, I have already made the point. Now, look, the other figures are here. You're talking about balance of payment deficit. Now we have balance of payment surplus. Current account deficit. Now we have current account surplus. 91-day treasury bill was as high as 31.49%.
Around 13.
Today we are talking about 13%. Yes. The policy rates, I did not even check it, but if I compare it with the year 2016, it was as high as 26%. Today we are talking about 14.5%. So clearly, there is no way anybody can conclude that Ghana is in HIPIC or we are at HIPIC levels. No way. However, if somebody is concerned about the figures, the development of the public debt, the development rate, the development of inflation rate, yes, it is a legitimate concern. But to liken it to the HIPIC levels is totally unacceptable. No economist will do such an analysis. Yes, it is a concern. Yes, the public debt is rising. Yes, we know why inflation rose from 9.3% to 10.4%. We know why. So yes, I'm saying that yes, the economy is our economy, it's a Ghanaian economy. We have the right to talk about it. We have the right to criticize government, media, academic, industry. We all have the right to criticize the government. NDC, as a political party, has the right to criticize the government. They are in opposition. That's a good job of an opposition party. But for somebody to liken the present economic indicators to the HIPIC or the pre-HIPIC levels in the year ending 2000, it is not a good analysis. And I have demonstrated it here. I have mentioned the figures here to you. They do not show that they are the same.
Okay.
So yes, you can talk about GDP, you can talk about maybe a poor economic performance of government. You can do politics with that. But if you ask a politician, when you meet them, ask them. Me, I'm not doing politics. Yeah. When you meet them, ask them. But if you're asking me as an economist, that's are we in HIPIC levels? I'm saying no.
The data you've shown essentially?
No, in 3 levels. We have not subscribed to it. Ghana is no longer a poor income country. And the data shows that the economic indicators do not match. They are not the same as the pre-HIPIC levels. Okay. How can you compare inflation figure of 54% to 10.4%?
Okay. Oh, now, he's mentioned all the figures, but for you, I'm sure you caught on to the discussion around the HIPIC, the fact that we are exhibiting characteristics of HIPIC. He has disputed that. From Amabuso Kind, the spare parts dealers, and people within your space, what do you make of the debt levels? I mean, they are increasing, like he said. It is concerning, but then we shouldn't be too concerned because there are other indicators. You are hearing that we are around 263 billion started a year, 219 or so billion. When you hear all these figures, what do you make? You must be concerned.
We are not academics. Yeah. The academics will come out with facts and figures, to.
You come out with the realities, on the ground.
we talk about the realities on the ground, and if anybody hears that government has borrowed up to that level, it sounds a bit worrying. But one must ask that those monies that they have borrowed, have they really put it into good use? If you ask me, I would say yes.
Okay.
Yes, they've put it into good use.
From our president, I mean, disagrees. He says that he doesn't see where the monies have been put.
Let's leave
the politics out.
Yes, let's leave the politics to them.
I wouldn't want you to respond to the former president.
Yes. Let's leave the politics to them, because yesterday I was listening to the news when the former president, made that statement, and they called Sami Jemfi, and he was trying as much as possible to justify it. They call the Minister of Information, Kojo Opon Nkrumah. He also tried to, disprove it. So
it is to be expected.
Yes, But we, the citizens, it is left to us, the citizens, to, know that what this man and that man is saying, which is the correct one. Fine. If we look all over the place, we could see that a lot of construction work is going on. Look at Obichebi, look at Tamale, look at Pokuase interchange. And they are saying, well, I don't know, but they are saying that the Pokuase interchange, we don't have such interchange in Africa.
So you believe that the monies that have
is being put into good use, even though if you listen to the quantum, it sounds a bit high, yes. But as far as I'm concerned, I can say the money is being put into a good use, and so therefore we shouldn't, talk so much about it. When the government was also in power, he also tried as much as possible, to put a lot of infrastructure in place, and by doing that, a lot of money was also spent. Yes, it was also spent. They also, added onto the total country's debt. Yes, and he did something by way of construction, a lot of facilities. So if this government is also doing the same thing, I don't think we have to bastardize the government. It's for the benefit of the whole country.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now you've been speaking about your expectations ahead of the Finance Minister's presentation. Now some members of Parliament have also been talking about what they expect. We've been speaking to some members of the minority and some members of the seven.
Finance Ken Ofori-Atta is expected to present the budget for the first quarter of 2021 on Wednesday. Ahead of the event in Parliament, some members of the House spoke to Citi News on their expectations.
It's going to be interesting to see what the minister is going to say, but I can see the appetite to do election spending, and they are spending heavily. I can see expenditure at the district assemblies that I can't account for in the composite budget. I can see government dishing out monies to people when they tell you it's a government intervention. I don't know the sources of that money. So it will be interesting to listen to the finance minister to see. No, this is a ritual, knowing that in a few days we are going on recess and we don't come back until next year. This is a ritual to just give government opportunity to spend in lieu of the new budget that will be coming in 2021. So it will be interesting.
It is the normal one. Maybe it's going to cover the wages and salaries and other minor expenditures of the government, and that is what I'm sure the budget is going to capture. The 3 months budget is going to capture. So I'm not sure you're going to see any huge thing that we are going to build this, we are going to do that. No, it's not going to happen. It's a normal recurrent expenditure of government activities for the next year, maybe from January to March, and that is what. So nobody should have any different or bigger expectation. No. Those expectations, you wait after March. If Akufo-Addo government, which I know is going to retain power, comes, we'll present it and we see what it will be in the main budget. It's just a normal recurrent expenditure of government, and that is what we're going to deal with.
The Plant Variety Protection Bill was read for the second time and approved. On the issue of the decision of 9 CSOs seeking justice for Daniel Domelevo in relation to filing a suit against the president at the Supreme Court, MP for Kombungu Ras Mubarak justified the action with reasons.
For Domelevo to have been asked to stay at home for over 100 days, clearly it is something that is unacceptable. I mean, you ask yourself, whether if this were Nana Akufo-Addo's private organization, he would ask somebody to sit at home for over 100 days without, without any work done, whilst he continues to pay the person. And we've seen several officers, not just Daniel Domelevo, several officers who have served under the NDC, who were asked to go home and they are getting paid. I can give you another example.
this gentleman called Menu from the National Youth Authority. He was a deputy national coordinator of the NYA for 4 years. This gentleman is sitting at home whilst he draws salary. So these are egregious, blatant abuse of office, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's in the right direction. I am hoping that the CSOs would get a favorable judgment.
So you had some members of Parliament sharing their expectations ahead of the presentation of the first quarter budget, advanced budget by the Finance Minister in a few minutes time. Now, as is to be expected, the minority would express their disappointment and the fact that they're not expecting anything different. The majority would then defend the fact that, okay, monies need to be allocated for the running of the government's infrastructure or for the first 3 months of the year 2021 after an election. Now, you were speaking about the city's performance. Now, we do know that usually in the first quarter, in terms of the performance of the local currency, sometimes there are some issues, the repatriation of currencies, Christmas spending, and all of that. But this year, it's performed well. 2.5.
And we know why, the borrowing. If you get $1 billion from IMF, $1 billion, you're not talking about cedis, amounting to almost 6 billion cedis. Your CD will stabilize.
So
syndicated loan, Cocoa Board.
Yeah. 1.3 billion. All right, so now our parliamentary correspondent, Duke Mensah-Opoku, is on standby to essentially more or less bring us the story from the floor before the Finance Minister actually reads the advanced budget to us. Let's cross over to my colleague Duke Mensah-Opoku for his narration.
Finance Ken Ofori-Atta. Now, the House has been in session for the past 1 hour, looking at various procedural matters that must take place before the House receives the Minister for Finance for the presentation of the budget and for the referral of the budget that has been presented, which is the expenditure and advance of appropriation for 21, to the Finance Committee, which would then do a scrutiny of it and bring it back to the House for debate for it to be approved. Now, to give a bit of a background to what is happening here, after the passage of the Public Financial Management Act in 2016, the governance architecture and the structure in the country makes it mandatory for the Finance Minister to present a budget for the first quarter of the succeeding year in an election year. So the first time this was done in 2016 by then Minister for Finance, Seth Emmanuel Tekbe. At that point in time, he requested for some $2.75 billion. That's the equivalent of 11 billion Ghana cedis then, which was approved in 2016. That expenditure and appropriation of advance took place on the 13th of November 2016. It was October, 2016, that was done here in Parliament. Now, this year, the cue we are picking is that the Minister for Finance would be presenting an expenditure request to spend from the consolidated fund of an amount approximately some 27.4 billion Ghana cedis here. But before that, the House has gone through its processes. The Speaker of the House, Professor Aaron Michael Quay, is in his seat. The minority leader, majority leader, members of the House are all seated. About, carefully look at them, just about over 150 members are seated, way beyond the 92-member mark, which is the required quorum as per the standing orders of the House. 1/3 of members and even presentations like the budget can be done. Now, all those requirements have been satisfied. As I speak to you, the House is currently considering the committee report of the Lands and Forestry Committee of the House on the annual budget performance
of the Lands Commission for the year 2016. Before that, the annual report of the Forestry Commission for the year 2015 was approved, and was during the debate that the Member of Parliament for Tamale South and Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu made a call for the Forestry Commission to explain why there were some budget overruns in the report that was brought to the House. Of course, the Minister for Monetary and Evaluation, who's also a member of for Old Tafu, had cause to challenge what the Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu said. So, as we speak, the debate on the Lands Commission's annual report for the year 2016 has just begun. I'll take you to the floor of the House, where the Member of Parliament for Akachi South, Bernard Ahiafo, is debating the report of the Lands and Forestry Committee of the House on the annual report of the Lands Commission for 2016 in readiness for the ushering in of the Finance Minister to present the expenditure in advance of appropriation, or the advanced budget for the one fulfilling the requirements of the Public Financial Management Act. So, the Member of Parliament for Akachi South, Bernard Ahiafo, who's also Vice Chairman of the Subsidiary Legislation Committee of the House, is currently on the floor.
Or any land vested in the Commission. Mr. Speaker, the Lands Commission is to advise the government, local authorities, and traditional authorities on the policy framework for the development of a particular area of Ghana to ensure that the development of individual pieces of land is coordinated with the relevant development plan for the area concerned. Mr. Speaker, it goes on. The functions of the Lands Commission to the socio-economic development of this country, Mr. Speaker, cannot be, however, overemphasized. Mr. Speaker, the Lands Commission is now into various divisions. We have Land Valuation Division, we have Survey and Mapping Division, we have Land Registration Division, which we popularly call Land Title Registration Division. Mr. Speaker, if the Lands Commission do not function effectively, problems associated with land being the highest in our courts, Mr. Speaker, we cannot have reductions in them. The functions of the Lands Commission is such an important constitutional function that we should not whittle it down at all. Mr. Speaker, I have looked at the report carefully, and it is good to note. It is good to note under paragraph 6.2 that in the year 2016 there has been integrated land administration service with enhanced service delivery process. Mr. Speaker, these are what we want as a country to improve in our land issues. Mr. Speaker, it is also good to know that in the year under reference, 2016, digitization and automation of land services delivery process has taken place. This will go a long way to help the Lands Commission in the delivery of their functions. Mr. Speaker, there has also been an improved working environment for the Lands Commission in the year under review. There was a bit of staffing challenge as a result of the attrition rate. Mr. Speaker, the human resource system of the Lands Commission has also been improved in the year under review, particularly 2016. Mr. Speaker, with what we've seen in the report, if every successive government should continue to improve the facilities of the Lands Commission, I believe strongly that the Lands Commission will be able to perform creditably and reliably to the expectation of all Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, on this note, I urge the House to adopt the committee's report.
Thank you very much. May I put a question? Yes, Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, the Committee of Lands and Forestry received the 2016 Lands Commission's report on the 19th, 20. About 2016 report. 2016. Meanwhile, the report was brought to the committee in 2020. 4 years. 4 good years. Mr. Speaker, during the committee meeting, we asked the Minister for Lands and Forestry Deputy, the Honorable Benito, about the delay of the report. And it cleared that most of the times it's not coming from the ministry, but the agencies. They are supposed to furnish the ministry with the reports, and then they can also forward the report to the committee. And when the report gets to the ministry, then the audit department at the ministry will also have to go through. Now, Mr. Speaker, the challenge is that for my investigation as a member of the committee, many of the members of parliament in the 6th parliament are no longer members of the committee. So it will be difficult for most of us to know what exactly transpired in 2016 if the report is being brought 4 years, 4 good years. Mr. Speaker, I think that this House has to task the ministries so that we ensure that reports of their respective ministries are brought in this House on time. Because if you are to discuss 4 years reports, my colleague Roxanne is saying there are records. Yes, I agree that there are records, but 4 years. I heard his voice. 4 years, Mr. Speaker. I think that there's a need for us to deal with this issue. Other than that, Mr. Speaker, we'll be having reports that will have members of parliament who have not even been to this House, and it will not help this House. Mr. Speaker, one thing that I can say for sure that there has been a total improvement at the Lands Commission is the new system that you have brought, the CSAU. Mr. Speaker, currently when you go to Lands Commission and you submit your document for registration, you are being given an alert that this is where your document has reached. And I think that is an improvement, which this government, since we also came into government, we have been able to do more than what was happening in 2016. Mr. Speaker, today, you can go to Lands Commission and do a search for 3 days. Previously, it would take you like 2 years and 3 years to get a search report. Today, the total number of certificates being issued at Land Registration Division has increased. Previously, it would take you some years before you get a land title certificate. That is why today, the total of land guards that we have reduced because people now register their lands. Mr. Speaker, if your house is demolished, meaning that you don't pass through the proper channel, that is why you have your house to be demolished. Mr. Speaker, to conclude with it, I want to appeal to the Minister for Lands and Forestry to look at the employment rate at Lands Commission. Mr. Speaker, during the committee's meeting, I asked a question whether they have enough lawyers. It was clear to us that because of the salary that being paid to the lawyers, they refused. Just about a month or some months ago, the Finance Ministry gave clearance for them to employ lawyers. Out of the 10 lawyers that they were looking for, they had only one person. And I've been informed that even that person to have even resigned because of the amount that he is being paid at the end of the month. Meanwhile, ministry, department, and agencies, their lawyers are taking more than this. So they have to resign and go to section. So I want to make it clear to him that we should ensure, because if they don't have enough lawyers, that is where we have judgment debts and people will be doing some kululus at Lands Commission. So they need to get more lawyers for them. They need to employ more people for them. Wait. Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I thank you for the opportunity.
Honorable members, I'll be advising when there is no real division on any matter in the House, let us not introduce one by all means, especially by the honorable members on my right. I'll put a question. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The motion is duly adopted. 11. Chairman of the committee.
Right Honorable Speaker, with your permission, I move that this Honorable House adopts the report Lands and Forestry on the budget performance report in respect of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources for the period January to December 2019. And with your permission, I present your committee's report. I expect the Hamzat office to capture the entire report as having been read, whilst I concentrate on the observation and conclusions. Right Honorable Speaker.
Honorable, we are used to the pattern now. Tell us what you want.
Right Honorable Speaker, the committee observed that an initial amount of 525,916,941 Ghana cedis was approved by Parliament for the implementation of the ministry's activities for the 2019 financial year. This initial approved amount was revised downwards to 506,495,575 Ghana cedis during the mid-year budget review. However, as at the end of the year 2019, an amount of 696,229,666.30 Ghana cedis, representing an increment of 189,734,093 Ghana cedis. 37% had been released to the ministry and its agencies. Reference is made to Table 3 above. The ministry attributed the budget overruns to the payment of allowances for the beneficiaries recruited to the youth in afforestation program. It was explained that as part of government's efforts to restore the nation's degraded landscapes and to ensure a sustainable management, development, and protection of forests and wildlife resources, the ministry initiated the Youth in Afforestation program in line with the National Forest Plantation Development Program. However, sufficient funding was not provided under the ministry's budget to pay for the allowances of the beneficiaries. The Minister of Finance's attention was consequently drawn to the issue, and additional funding was released to cater for the shortfall. 9.3, the turnaround time. The committee observed progress in some of the performance targets under the reduction of turnaround time for land service delivery. It was noted, for instance, that the average time for this registration reduced from 42 days.
And in conclusion, we all have the reports.
In conclusion, the committee has thoroughly examined the performance report of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources for the period January to December 2019 and has observed that the ministry generally performed well in meeting its policy outcome targets, despite the numerous challenges encountered during the year, such as delay in the release of allowances due beneficiaries working under the National Forestation Program, increase illegal activities in the nation's forest and wildlife subsector through illegal harvesting, mining, encroachment, poaching and wildfires, manual land registration process and its attendant delays, rising chieftaincy disputes affecting stool land revenue mobilization, and unpredictable releases of mineral royalties. The committee also recommends the ministry for fulfilling its obligations under Section 27 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921, and accordingly urges the House to adopt its report. Respectfully submitted.
Yes. Honorable. Yes, Honorable Hussein.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the report and to make a few comments on the report. Mr. Speaker, this report relates to the performance of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, not Ministry of Lands and Forestry, Lands and Natural Resources, for the period January to December 2019. Mr. Speaker, it's significant to observe that the report of 2017-2018 is not yet before this House. It's not yet before this House. Mr. Speaker, report under discussion. There are some worrying developments. There are some worrying developments which have been captured by the chairman and the report of the committee. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, the ministry programmed to carry out 30% or produce 30% of orthophoto maps. 30%. Orthophoto maps are very important for determining the spread and availability of minerals in this country. The mineralization of the country is seen from the orthophoto maps that are produced. The Speaker, for the whole year, the ministry was able to do only 4.8%. In fact, that was an abysmal failure because they had programmed to do 30%. They achieved only 4.8. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, it is important to know that without the orthophoto maps produced, it has a direct correlation with what I'm saying, because the people of Galamsey. The Speaker, land conflicts are very, very serious in this country. So the ministry, as part of its programs, started establishing customary land secretariats so that the customary land secretariats will document all the lands falling within the customary area of the various traditional jurisdictions. That's page 6. The ministry had programmed to establish 8 customary land secretariats. 8. For 2019, they established 3. 8. Why wouldn't they establish? Why did they establish only 3 when, in fact, we have issues with land? And because traditional areas are not able to determine exactly which area is their land. Mr. Speaker, timber utilization. The ministry said they were going to issue only 170 permits for salvage permits, but the number of salvage permits vetted, processed, and issued, 170. Mr. Speaker, by the end of the year, they had issued 385. 385, Mr. Speaker, and I'm worried because the harvesting of rosewood is on the increase. It's on the increase. And Mr. Speaker, most of these timber permits, survey permits issued, could be used for the purposes of harvesting rosewood. And all of us know the devastating effect of harvesting rosewood on the fragile ecological zone of the northern region and parts of the Volta region. Mr. Speaker, the ministry has said that they were going to harvest or permit to be harvested only 50,000 metric tons of timber. 50,000. Mr. Speaker, 447,000 tons were harvested. That is catastrophic. That is catastrophic because you have to regulate the harvesting of your timber. And so you say that for a year you can only permit 50,000 cubic metric tons of timber to be harvested. And at the end of the year, you not only exceed the 50,000 tons, you permit to be harvested 447,000 tons. And this is unacceptable. And the report doesn't tell us why that was the case. The Speaker, Ghana has got a problem, and it is a problem that we inherited from our colonial masters. Our land boundaries were not clearly demarcated. And so, indeed, when you go to Bui is not the end of our boundary. Behind Bui, we have land there as a country. Today, that area is gradually being taken over by Ivory Coast. So, the ministry has said that we're going to plant trees to demarcate our boundaries. That the Ghana-Togo maritime boundary area, they were going to plant 200 miles of trees. 200. Mr. Speaker, at the end of the year, they planted nothing. Nothing. Mr. Speaker, in the international buffer zone, they said they were going to plant 6 trees, and it's important. It's important. If you look at, and this technology, tree planting technology, is a German technology. The Germans use copper. We are now using different trees to demarcate our boundaries. Mr. Speaker, in the international land demarcation area, they planted nothing. Zero. Mr. Speaker, indeed, internally, regional boundaries are an issue. So the ministry had consciously said that as part of the work of the Ghana Boundary Commission, the ministry, which falls under the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, regional boundaries should be established by the planting of trees. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, nothing. So are districts, nothing. Mr. Speaker, I thought that the report would have indicated why these laudable objectives were not accomplished. Was it as a result of the fact that the Ministry of Lands arose and the Ministry of Finance failed, refused, or neglected to release funds? What was it? Or was it that the minister was just sleeping on his job? We are not told. Mr. Speaker, we are not told. And this is a report. This is a report of the committee. Mr. Speaker.
Order, Honorable.
Yes. Paragraph 9.9, Mr. Speaker, is very, very important.
Honorable members, which of you stood up first? Honorable, please continue.
Thank you very much, Right Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my colleague on the other side has been a minister before, and I think that is highly unparliamentary for him to use the words he just used. Mr. Speaker, I pray that he draws. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know which words he's complaining about.
Honorable, please.
Mr. Speaker, on paragraph.
Honorable, please.
Please conclude.
Mr. Speaker, it says the minister was sleeping on his job. Can he retract, please?
Honorable, that is accusatory. To say any minister was sleeping on his job. If anyone said that of you, I would seriously object.
Mr. Speaker, I never said that. Mr. Speaker, I didn't say that the minister was sleeping on his job. I said that they didn't provide a reason. Was it that the Ministry of Finance?
Honorable.
I chose my words carefully.
Order. Honorable, when we either sleep or also go out of the way a bit and we are corrected, let us take it in good faith and proceed.
Mr. Speaker, the minister was not sleeping on his job. But I just wanted to know why the minister did not do this. So I'm asking to know.
That is very different from talking about someone sleeping on his job.
Mr. Speaker, I withdraw those words.
Thank you. Please proceed.
And I apologize to the minister.
And conclude.
In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, we are told, at paragraph 9.9, that a whooping 244,431.32 million was used for the construction of a one-story reception at the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, which was not planned. Mr. Speaker, this was expenditure which was not appropriated, which was not budgeted for. I thought that, and this infringes the Public Financial Management Act. It infringes it. So I thought that the committee would have told us exactly why and what was the treatment. Mr. Speaker, we are told that.
And in conclusion,
this report also does not tell us about what happened to the excavators that were seized from the small-scale mining sector. What happened to them? The report should have captured exactly what happened to the excavators. But with these few words, I support the report. I hope that the 2020 report will deal with those matters decisively. Thank you so very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Honorable Minister, you will conclude on behalf of the majority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I'll start from where the honourable member just left, and to state that the one-story reception that he made reference to was done under his watch. Since we came to meet it, it was done under your watch. And so if that amount is there in the report, what it then means is that you are the one who supervised it officially. And also, Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I want to say that we thank all the members who contributed to this report, especially the chairman and his able committee on lands and forestry. Mr. Speaker, there was an issue of budget overruns under the ministry for the year 2019, and that has been explained that it was due to inadequate budgetary provision that was made for the payment of allowances for the youth in afforestation program. Mr. Speaker, the honorable member who just concluded also indicated that under salvage permits, more salvage permits were issued, more than what was actually projected. Mr. Speaker, in terms of salvage permits...
Honorable Minister, order. Honorable Hussein, do you rise at a point of correction or order?
Mr. Speaker, the honorable minister has grossly misled this House. He said that the one-story building that was put up under my watch. It's a palpable falsehood. It's a palpable falsehood, and I request of him to withdraw that.
Thank you.
No, I ask you to withdraw that or prove it.
Honorable.
To withdraw that.
You have said it. Honorable Minister,
do the right thing.
Mr. Speaker, I will withdraw, but then to end by saying that
if you have
it was not him, but it was before us.
Please, don't qualify it before your qualification detracts from your withdrawal. So if you have withdrawn, I've heard. Conclude.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the honourable member, in making reference to the issuance of salvage permits, mentioned that more salvage permits were issued than what was projected. Mr. Speaker, that is correct, but then also to state that salvage permits are issued when they are requested, Mr. Speaker, because usually salvage permits are issued when, for instance, roads are being constructed and there is the need for us to salvage all the timber lying along that corridor, the road corridor. And then also, if, for instance, VRE or GRIDCO wants to put on pylon, the need for salvaging of trees along the route, that also is done. So, Mr. Speaker, in that particular year, more requests were made to the ministry regarding salvaging of such wood due to such infrastructure development that was ongoing. Mr. Speaker, the honourable member also mentioned that the ministry, especially the Forestry Commission, went beyond their own projected harvesting of logs of timber regarding plantation forestry. Mr. Speaker, yes, it's true. We budgeted for 50,000 metric cube and not metric tons, metric cube. But then we ended up going beyond that to 450,000 plus. Mr. Speaker, plantation timber usually is private driven. Most of it is private driven. And as a result, if there is a request from the private sector, the ones who have planted their own trees, that they intend harvesting it, we accede to that and allow them to harvest. So, Mr. Speaker, that was the reason why that occurred. Mr. Speaker, I also want to conclude by saying that the Lands Commission so far has done very well, except to say that, yes, next year, God willing, we are going to map the entire country, and after that, that will help us to be able to improve upon our land administrative system. It is not just straightforward to say you are going to map. Mr. Speaker, we only have two windows, two weather windows every year to be able to do that. Early beginning of the year and then during the Harmattan time. So once you miss that, what it means is that you have to wait until the next year. Mr. Speaker, I thank the entire House very much.
Thank you very much
for this, and we hope that you will continue to support us all the time. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Honourable members, we shall be brief in our remarks. As you can see, addendum papers continue to pour in. I'm advised even more are coming. Addendum paper now before us. Addendum listed 1, presentation of papers. Chairman of the Committee on Roads and Transport.
Report of the Committee on Roads and Transport on the determination of agency of the Air Navigation Services Agency Bill 2020.
The report is duly presented and is for distribution to honourable members. Item listed 2, procedural motion.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I move that item listed 2 on other papers addendum is moved. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Who seconds? Who seconds the procedural motion? Yes, Honourable.
Right Honourable Speaker, I second the motion.
Thank you very much. All those in favor say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. Chairman of the committee, the substantive motion. Item listed 3.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move that item listed 3, motion on today's order paper addendum, we move today. I so move, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I then seek your indulgence and present your committee's report. Speaker, I ask that the Hansa Department pick the whole report as being read, whilst I pick the highlights of the report. The Speaker, on page 2, paragraph 4, observation. The committee noted that air transport is one of the important modes of transport worldwide. The industry generates huge sums of revenue for the country, which aids in national development. That notwithstanding, the achievements in the industry are attained by existing strong institutions with the capacity of delivering world-class standards, and the consistency of this competence must be solidified by continuous auditing and revision of systems, structures, and institutions in line with their contemporary expectations and international obligations. Ghana has experienced its fair share of air traffic volumes, freight and passenger cargoes. An autonomous institution, Air Navigation Services, will provide not only air navigation safety, but support holistic drive of promoting the national image of Ghana in the global airspace. This has stated calls for the decoupling and the strengthening of infrastructure and its inherent institutions to meet both national and international obligations and best practices. Though the country has an administrative air navigation structure under the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority for the conduct of air navigation, it is not functionally independent and does not meet all the standards of ICAO recommended practices. The committee took cognizance of the impending ICAO audit review.
Chairman, we have the committee's report.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm ending here. Due to the conduct in 2021, and which requires the Act to be implemented before Ghana to fully meet the criteria for safety and security standards in aviation industry. Further, the parliamentary calendar at the moment does not lend to a timely passage of the bill, which is so critical for air navigation best practices in the country. Further, the exigency of the electoral timetable and meeting the ICAO audit necessitates this bill to be taken under certificate of urgency. Mr. Speaker, recommendation and conclusion, paragraph 5. The committee, therefore, by consensus, recommend to the House to adopt this report and to pass the Air Navigation Service Agency Bill 2020 under the certificate of urgency in accordance with Article 106(13) of the 1992 Constitution and Order 119 of the Standard Orders of the House. Humbly submitted, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable.
Right Honourable Speaker, I rise to second the motion moved by the chairman and to make a few comments of my own. Mr. Speaker, indeed, the committee, in consideration of Article 106(13) of the 1992 Constitution and Order 119, determined that this bill be taken under certificate of urgency. My chairman has already enumerated some of the reasons. Mr. Speaker, indeed, Ghana is doing very well in terms of aviation. The investments made in the past few years has become an envy of the region, Mr. Speaker. Kotoka is rated as the most improved airport in Africa in 2019. It didn't happen just in a vacuum. It means that our country is on the right path. Mr. Speaker, it's also clear that the traffic volumes in Ghana is increasing. Ghana Airport Company tells us that international passenger throughput is in excess of 2.2 million in 2019, which is a good information as well. Mr. Speaker, significantly, Ghana would have a review of the ICAO, that's the International Civil Aviation Organization review in early part of 2021. Mr. Speaker, it's important for us to be prepared for this review because the last review was very favorable. The ICAO is going to be expecting us to have an independent or autonomous air navigation authority, which is different from what we are doing now. It is all in line of best practice in the world, and I think our country shouldn't lose the opportunity. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the parliamentary window is shutting. I am sure we only have next week to be able to do this. We are unable to do this, Mr. Speaker, we will lose the opportunity, and what it means is that the review panel will come and we may not be able to do it. Mr. Speaker, I believe this is in order. I wasn't at the meeting, but I am fully aware this has got to be done and done properly and quickly. Mr. Speaker, with these few words, I encourage colleagues to support this motion and also approve this to be done under certificate of urgency. Issues about the real bill will be dealt with when we get to the consideration stage, Mr. Opportunity.
If you win, no one win like that planet. My baby, hold you low.
Sunana Abdul Razak. Last week, I received a message from Bet Planet. Come on, now win golden ticket. Na dan je injin saya ma Mercedes Benz na. Don ba ku yadda ba kuma gashi nan ga suna na kai. Mun ga na gora kaman gaskiya ne. Mun na son ce na gode Bet Planet. Na gode ma kowa.
If you win, no one win like Bet Planet. My baby, hold you low. If you win, no one win like Bet.
That's kind of cynical. I mean, because I'm not sure that all that we have done have necessarily been to the benefit of middle class or wealthy people. So we will get to that.
Tune in to The Point of View this and every Monday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. as I, Bernard Avile, get the right guests, ask them relevant questions on issues that matter to you.
When MDB came, because they were not putting money in the sinking fund.
They were not putting money in the sinking fund.
Yes.
That's why this curve is going up.
The money was going to the sinking fund, but it was not being applied to debt.
I think that there's a lot of apocryphal conspiracy theories around. And it's not different from 5G causes coronavirus, COVID-19 and things like that. So there's been this long-term held belief that somehow there are some people that have planned that they will bust hundreds of thousands of people to come and change Ghanaian electoral outcome. There is no evidence for it. There is absolutely no evidence for it.
I am saying that we have very professional herbalists in this country whose capacity I know because I've tried it. But also there are quack ones within them. And the earlier we weed them out, the better for us.
Remember, The Point of View is live every Monday and Wednesday at 9 p.m. only on Citi TV.
The Point of View is powered by Airtel Tigo. Have you heard that Airtel Tigo calls from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. and Airtel Tigo money transfers are now free on new SIMs? Now you know. Airtel Tigo. Life is simple.
To adjourn. 7. Mr. Speaker, your chairman, the committee chairman, is saying that yes, this bill is of an urgent nature, but it need not be taken in a day. It means, and then there is a need to engage stakeholders. It means the engagement of the potential stakeholders will exhaust the 7 days. That clearly should lead you to the conclusion that this bill cannot be treated as urgent. Because after the 7 days, we will rise and come back after elections. Clearly, more than 14 days. More than 14 days. I think the proper thing to have advised the minister to do was to gazette. Because whatever be the case, you wouldn't get the 14 days. And you, in the engagement with stakeholders, you might exhaust the 7 days. And so the bill cannot be of an urgent nature. It cannot. Because the 14-day waiver would have been lost. And so I think that, Mr. Speaker, secondly, just when the bill was laid in the House, the civil aviation, the Ghana Civil Aviation wrote to members of Parliament and cautioned that we should hasten slowly on the passage of this bill. Now, the Civil Aviation Authority is a critical stakeholder in this matter. Critical. But the letter was put in your pigeonhole. You didn't see it in your pigeonhole. Yes, it's in your pigeonhole. You have not visited the mails room. It was put in our pigeonholes. And so if the Civil Aviation Authority is a critical stakeholder and is cautioning that we tarry in the passage of this law, don't you think that there is a need to engage them? And how long will the engagement take? And so, as a matter of principle, I have no objection. I mean, I was brief. I have no doubt that this bill is important. I have no doubt. But I just think that we have 7 days. After 7 days, we will rise for probably 1 month, which is about 21 days sitting. And so your 14 days waiver would, to all intents and purposes, would have been spent. And if you took advantage of the days and advertise, you will still meet the requirements under Article 106(2). That is just my humble opinion. But I support that this bill is a very, very important bill for this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Paragraph 3 of page 3 that the Honourable Member opposite just referred to was captured in the report to give space if anything happens and it's come to the fact that we will not be able to pass the bill same day. It will therefore give us an opportunity to go to the second day and get it passed. But in terms of the consultation of the stakeholders, it has been done. At the point in time, the ministry even gave us a report indicating the engagement and the formation of a committee to look into the separation or decoupling of the Ghana Civil Aviation and the air navigation services, of which that committee report had been submitted to the minister. So that consultation has been made. We captured that paragraph so that we have space if for the activities of the work in the chamber, we'll not be able to do it one day, we'll be able to go to second or third day to get it done. Not that consultation has not been done, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honourable members. Honourable Minority Leader. Very well.
Mr. Speaker, in principle, I support the motion. But, Mr. Speaker, just for purposes of the record, there is a petition for the suspension of the proposed Air Navigation Services Agency Bill 2020, which petition was addressed to the Speaker and copied the Majority Leader and Minority Leader. And, Mr. Speaker, I'll just quote a paragraph and to urge the Minister to do further consultation with the stakeholders, because it is signed by Reli Yao Mensah, Secretary, GATCA, then Fred Opoku, President, GATSIA, and Gideon Age Geisa. And, Mr. Speaker, one of the main terms of reference of the decoupling committee was to ensure the sustainability of both critical aviation entities, the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority and the airport ANS provider. I'm reading exactly, so I'll give it to Hansard to capture. So, in principle, I support it, but in 2006, they indicate that Ghana underwent Universal Safety Oversight Audit Program by the International Civil Aviation Organization. This aviation audit, which assesses state safety oversight capabilities, identifies deficiencies in their safety effectiveness, and prepares recommendations and makes audit findings, are given to states to improve their safety efficiency. So we need an assurance from the minister that safety efficiencies are given as we negotiate this bill. As representatives of the people, we want to find out from the committee chairman whether you invited these groups. The Ghana Traffic Controllers Association is one. The other one is not too edible for my eyes. But, Chairman, yes, in principle, we support you, but as Parliament, we are obliged to give them a hearing, and the hearing must be at the level of your committee to listen to their grievances. Parliament, the Committee of Transport, Mr. Speaker, you may have to direct them to listen to the grievances of the concerned workers and see how we address them as we work to improve the bill. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honourable.
Mr. Speaker, if a bill has been presented to Parliament and referred to the appropriate committee, Parliament takes possession and indeed ownership of the process from the time it's introduced in Parliament. It doesn't any longer lie with the minister. So if space should be created to have further engagement, Speaker, it is Parliament to do so. And indeed, when a bill is certified as urgent, what it entails is waiving the 14-day Gazette notification. All others could be done. So, Mr. Speaker, it's introduced and the committee has recommended that it should be taken under a certificate of urgency. It doesn't necessarily mean that it should be taken within a day or 24 hours. So with the issues that have been raised by the minority leader, the committee could be advised to create space to meet the other petitioners and factor their concerns into the legislation. That's all that is required. It cannot stall legislation. It cannot stall legislation. But space, as representatives of the people, should be created to listen to them and how far we can go with their petitions. That is what is required of us. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
I put a question. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have it. The motion is duly adopted. Item listed for. Honourable Minister for Aviation.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to move the motion number 21 on page 9, that notwithstanding the provisions of Standing Order 81, which require that no motion shall be debated until at least 48 hours have elapsed between the date on which notice of the motion is given and the date on which the motion is moved, the motion for the second reading of the Air Navigation Service Agency Bill 2020 may be moved today. I also move, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable, you are reading, you are moving with motion. Motion listed.
21. It's a procedural motion.
Item listed 21.
Mr. Speaker, I see that we are navigating with usual business. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, this year is an election year, and we've had to direct the whips to call in members to attend upon this House so that we hear the Honorable Minister for Finance. We've been waiting, and some members have to return back to their constituencies. And therefore, Minister for Finance, when is he appearing to give us his budget, mini budget or vote on account? It's now 1:30, and we are serious people, so he should be here. Minister for Finance is here. He should appear and let's see what he has.
We have been waiting.
We can't wait
been
for him,
doing
Mr. Speaker.
other business, including determination of matters of legislative urgency. Please, let us proceed with our work. The Honourable Minister will appear.
Rightly so, Mr. Speaker, but the majority leader must assure me, where is your Minister for Finance? You said members should come and hear him.
I'm interested in his appearance than his presence.
I want him to demonstrate that he's truly
location.
in charge. Where is he? Where is Minister for Finance?
Honourable Majority Leader, your counterpart is in the present location of the Honourable Minister. If you may satisfy him, we may move on with speed.
Mr. Speaker.
Not on that matter, but on the other matters ahead of us.
Mr. Speaker.
We have not come to him. But out of curiosity, you may want to advise him where your Finance Minister is currently located.
Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister is within the presence of Parliament. And he has been here over the past 1 hour. Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister does not control the order of business in this House. So if the House is ready, he is ready. He's been here for more than an hour. And the Minority Leader is aware. He's aware that the Minister is in the presence of this House. Or sometimes this make-believe, hop, step, and jump that you engage in sometimes is baffling. You know the location of the Finance Minister.
Honourable,
can you vouch that you don't know the location of the Finance Minister?
the two leaders are aware.
If we are ready, the Minister is ready. Mr. Speaker, I noticed when I re-entered that we had...
Honourable, let me call item 21 and let's proceed.
Item 21?
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, we have just dealt with item 21.
Well,
unless maybe you want to deal with item 22. We just finished with item 21, which is procedural motion.
Where do you want us to go at this stage?
Right. I rise to
just a moment. Honourable Leader, where are we? Where are we moving to?
I just the House Newsroom and motion listed as item number 21.
21.
21 has been moved by the Minister responsible for aviation. If we want to take a secondment of the motion. It could be so done. When it's done, we'll suspend further action on that. And then the minister will come and deliver his paper to the House. After the Minister of Finance finishes, we can then continue with the rest of the items.
What is your...
So let's listen to the member seconding the motion in respect of item 21. And then the Minister of Finance then will come in.
So item 21.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to second the motion listed on today's order paper 21 on page 9. Thank you.
Many. Honorable members, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Those against say no. The ayes have motion duly adopted. Honorable Majority Leader, where do we go from here?
Speaker, as I said, the natural flow would have been to attend to item listed as 22. But given the highlight of today's activities, I want to pray the House to vary the order of business and go back to item listed as 5 for the minister to come and move the motion. The minister responsible for finance to come and move the motion listed as item number 5.
Thank you very much. Item listed 5. Minister for Finance. Honorable Minister for Finance, you're welcome to the House, and we move motion numbered 6 on the other paper.
Mr. Speaker, the motion to move is number 5, not 6, number 5.
Motion 5.
Yes.
On the other paper. Honorable Finance Minister. Which you may do from the restroom. You may move from the rostrum, yes. Honorable.
So after about a 2-hour delay, the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta is about to present the expenditure in advance of operation, the budget for the first quarter of 2021 to members of Parliament. Let's turn the feed down.
On the authority of His Excellency the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, I beg to move that this Honorable House approves by resolution the withdrawal of the sum of 27,434,180,520 Ghana cedis from the consolidated fund for the purpose of meeting expenditure necessary to carry on the services of government in respect of the period expiring 3 months of the financial year or on the coming into operation of the Appropriation Act in respect of 2021 financial year. Mr. Speaker, this is also in line of Section 23 of the Public Financial Management Act PFM 2016 Act 921. I humbly request the Hansard Department to capture the full document. Mr. Speaker, permit me to extend the gratitude of His Excellency the President for the support and cooperation received from this august House during his first term of office. Together with the abundant and abiding grace of God, this session of Parliament has been most vital in transforming the economy and providing for a better future for our fellow Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, in 2017, when I had the privilege and blessing to stand before you, I invoked the miracle of the 5 loaves and 2 fishes to illustrate the predicament we found ourselves in. In using that miracle, Mr. Speaker, I was declaring our faith and hope in a God who can, with little, and in fact do exceedingly above all we can ask or think, and submitting that we need not fear because the battle is the Lord's. Mr. Speaker, as it is evident to all, not only have we turned the economy around through hard work and innovative policies, but we also have the courage to implement the 100 billion Ghana Cares of our Tampa program. The diligent and disciplined pursuit of the innovative policies have restored macroeconomic stability, promoted inclusive growth, and transformed lives of millions of Ghanaians. Today, Mr. Speaker, some 1.2 million Ghanaians are in senior high school. Almost 3 million of our children are in the school feeding program. We are exporting food through the Planting for Food and Jobs program, and 1D1F is generating jobs all around the country. How far indeed the Lord has brought us. This is the competence we promised Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, it is trite knowledge that data speak for itself. Permit me to use the data to separate facts from opinions, even if these opinions emanate from persons, or may I say fathers who should know better. The success of our focused macroeconomic stabilization and fiscal consolidation program is evidenced by 1, growing the economy at an average rate of 7% between 2017 and 2019, as compared to 2.8% between 2014 and 2016. Reducing inflation from 15.4% at end December 2016 to 7.9% by the end December 2019, the lowest since the Fourth Republic in 1992. Maintaining an average fiscal balance below a 5% of GDP threshold between 2017 and 2019, as compared to an average of 6.3% of GDP in 2014 and 2016. Improving gross international reserves to reach $8.6 billion US, or about 4 months of import cover by February 2020, as compared to 3.5 months of import cover in 2016. Successfully exiting the IMF ECF program in April 2019, which had been completely derailed by 2016. Mr. Speaker, leadership of any nation succeeds or fails on the strength or weakness of how the economy is managed. A leader who cannot run the economy is a leader who can never be trusted to deliver. Leadership is about the economy and the character of the leader. It is about knowing how to grasp the problems, the expertise to find solutions, the courage to take bold decisions, the conviction to stay the course, the competence to get it fixed, the compassion to cushion the impact on our people, and the vision to create new and transforming opportunities for the people out of the situation. I recall how in 2014, according to a Bloomberg annual table, the cedi was the worst performing currency in the entire world, only managing to perform better than the war-torn Ukraine's Hryvnia currency. Indeed, in dollar terms, Mr. Speaker, former president took an economy that was $64 billion in 2013 and shrank it down to $55 billion in 2016. This means that after 4 years in office, that administration managed to achieve an unenviable record of reducing the Ghanaian economy by nearly $10 billion US. These, Mr. Speaker, are the facts. Mr. Speaker, in 2001, Ghana had no choice but to swallow her pride and to sign up to the HIPC initiative, a legacy led by the outgoing NDC government. Thankfully, Mr. Speaker, President J. Kufuor got us to completion point in record time and came out of HIPC. By 2014, barely 2 years in office, President Mahama's homegrown economic policy had failed and Ghana signed up once again onto an IMF program. The Akufo-Addo government took Ghana out of the IMF program in record time. Ironically, those who mismanage the economy for us to come and fix it are the ones wishing Ghana ill. My message to them is this: there is no turning back. HIPC is behind us. Economic mismanagement is behind us. The economy is stronger today than it was 4 years ago, and will continue to grow stronger and stronger with 4 more years to do more for the people of Ghana with God's help. Mr. Speaker, we must be careful as a nation to reject those who return from the promised land with a bad report to subvert the spirit of our people, and to reject leaders who take us back to Egypt. Mr. Speaker, in our quest to stabilize the economy, we have also lowered the rate of debt accumulation, reprofiled our debt, and implemented a number of structural reforms in a transparent manner for an efficient and effective management of public debt. Mr. Speaker, these significant macro-fiscal gains were achieved in spite of having paid 12 billion Ghana cedis in excess energy capacity charges, which we inherited in 2017, and we have kept the lights on. We have settled substantial part of the 11 billion outstanding arrears bequeathed to us. We abolished 17 unproductive taxes to boost productivity of the private sector. We spent 21.6 billion cedis, Mr. Speaker, to clean up a collapsing financial sector and protected 4.6 million depositors and 81,700 investors. That is the competent government, hard work, and God's hand that has delivered us. Mr. Speaker, for fair-minded observers, the above economic indicators are clear evidence of the sharp and stark difference between a competent Akufo-Addo-led government and others. Mr. Speaker, these gains have not been at the expense of our promise to improve the welfare of fellow Ghanaians. In fact, the issue of welfare is very dear to President Akufo-Addo and his government. For this reason, we invested in excess of 15.7 billion Ghana cedis on key flagship programs. Mr. Speaker, these flagship programs have created a platform for real economic transformation, strengthening human capital through enhancing access to healthcare, education, and skills development, modernizing agriculture and industry, delivering infrastructure across the country, including a revitalized railway subsector, and creating jobs. We have remained faithful of our budgets, a Sempa budget in 2017, a Juma budget in 2018, Impuntuo budget in 2019, and the precinct in Kosovo and in Kabum budget of COVID-19 2020. Mr. Speaker, we have restored nurses and teachers training allowances and implemented a free SHS program to empower current and future generations and to also ease the financial burden on households. In addition to supporting 100,000 graduates through NAPCOP, we have lowered the net tax burden of the Ghanaian. That is the care we promised Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, achievements from the prudent macro-fiscal policies and the resultant turnaround of the economy amidst unprecedented welfare-oriented interventions under the flagship program have been fully tested by the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic since March 2020. Mr. Speaker, this pandemic continues to devastate countries, disrupt productivity, threaten food security, multiply job losses, and reduce incomes, particularly in the poorest, as well as traumatic loss of lives. This year, the world is on course to experiencing the deepest global economic contraction in the post-war era, causing investments and trade to plunge. Mr. Speaker, the Ghanaian economy has also faced the health and economic consequences of this pandemic, which threatens lives and livelihoods. By God's grace, COVID-19 has so far not been as deadly due to our President's leaders. Our preoccupation has been on addressing the socio-economic dislocations occasioned by this pandemic. We have moved swiftly, Mr. Speaker, to mitigate the threats to lives and livelihoods of our fellow Ghanaians. By one, implementing the 1.342 million COVID-19 emergency preparedness and response plan to protect lives, operationalizing the 1.2 billion coronavirus alleviation program to support businesses, launching a 2 billion guarantee scheme to enable SMEs borrow at more affordable rates, supporting the 3 billion credit and stimulus package by commercial banks in Ghana to revitalize industries, especially pharmaceutical, hospitality services, and the manufacturing sectors.
Honourable Mr. Just a moment, please. Honourable members, in view of the time and in view of the business ahead of us, I direct that our business proceeds beyond the prescribed hours. Thank you. Honourable Minister, you may please proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, leadership is best tested in times of crisis, whether it is to do with the crisis of Dumso, the crisis of homegrown economic mismanagement, or the imported crisis of a global pandemic like the novel coronavirus. It is when crisis hits, Mr. Speaker, that the people see and feel who a real leader is and who is not. Earlier in March, President Akufo-Addo told the nation, we know how to bring the economy back to life. What we do not know is how to bring people back to life. We will therefore protect people's lives, then their livelihoods. Mr. Speaker, those words were truly profound and true to his character. The President has put his leadership skills just where his mouth is. Government set out to protect people's lives and then their livelihoods as well. The whole world, and more importantly, the vast majority of Ghanaians know that the President and his team have managed the COVID-19 crisis far better than most countries in the world. Indeed, our efforts have been adjudged as among the best 3 in the world. Mr. Speaker, the robustness of our macroeconomic fundamentals and the efficacy of government's COVID mitigation measures have been borne out by recent indicators. According to the Bank of Ghana's survey in August 2020, consumer confidence is bouncing back strongly and is currently above pre-COVID-19 lockdown levels. Business confidence has also increased, although below pre-lockdown levels. About 95% of businesses surveyed showed strong optimism, reflecting the improving macroeconomic conditions, stability in the exchange rate, lower input prices, moderation in lending rates, and positive industry prospects. Accordingly, the projected GDP growth rate 2020 reported in July has been revised from 0.9% to 1.9% to reflect these dynamics. As the Bank of Ghana stated, the green shoot of rebound in economic activity are clearly with us. We must be thankful to God for these encouraging developments. This and other assessments provoke a degree of optimism and reveals that the swift, bold, and effective measures implemented by government have been key in quickening the pace of economic recovery. This is the competent leadership we promised under President Akufo-Addo. Indeed, the President's decisive and compassionate leadership in these challenging times have been internationally acknowledged and has added to our reputation as the Black Star of Africa. Mr. Speaker, our efforts to protect lives and preserve livelihoods, coupled with the impact of the pandemic on revenues and expenditures, resulted in fiscal deficit of 11.4% of GDP. As already indicated in the presentation to this August House in July, we have a well-thought-out Ghana Cares over Tampa plan and strategy to return this economy to a more sustainable fiscal path in the medium term. Mr. Speaker, the 2020 fiscal framework, which increased the fiscal deficit from 4.7% of GDP to 11.4% in the 2020 mid-year review. The fiscal operations of the economy for the January to September 2020 period show that on provisional basis, both revenues and expenditures exceeded their respective targets, resulting in the fiscal deficit of 9% of GDP against a program deficit of 8.9% of GDP. More specifically, total revenues and grants for the period, which totaled 36.7 billion Ghana cedis, exceeded the target of 35.7 billion Ghana cedis by 972.7 million Ghana cedis, or 2.7%. Total expenditures, including arrears clearance, on the other hand, amounted to 71.3 billion against a target of 70 billion Ghana cedis, showing a deviation of 1.3 billion Ghana cedis, or 1.8% from target. The overall fiscal deficit resulting from the revenues and expenditure performance for the period through September 2020 is Ghana 34.6 billion cedis, or 9% of GDP, against a target of 34.3 billion Ghana cedis, or 8.9% of GDP. The corresponding primary balance was a deficit of 15.7 billion Ghana cedis, or 4.1% of GDP, against a target of 15.4 billion, or 4% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, this means that we can now approach the next financial year with increased optimism, largely because we already have a plan and, may I say, a track record. We expect growth to rebound strongly in 2021 at 5.7% as a result of our implementation of the transformation and revitalization phase of the Ghana Cares over Tampa program. In addition, we have also scaled down the projected 2021 fiscal deficit from 9.6% of GDP as reported in the mid-year review to 8.3% of GDP, reflecting the improved revenues from the anticipated pickup of economic activities and a more rationalized public expenditure program. With this path, we expect a return to the fiscal responsibility threshold of 5% of GDP fiscal deficit and a positive primary balance earlier than the 2024 fiscal year previously announced. Mr. Speaker, I want to assure this House that we will recover, we will revitalize, and we will transform the economy. We shall pivot off of the AFCFTA headquarters in Accra for Ghana to become a dynamic regional hub. We have planted the seeds for a fast-paced and more inclusive recovery, recognizing that the role of capital and credit, we are certain that the cleaned up and revitalized financial sector will support our recovery efforts and sustain growth. Mr. Speaker, let me give you a glimpse of our new strengthened financial ecosystem, which will facilitate credit and investment to the private sector. We have established the Ghana Incentive-Based Risk-Sharing System for Agricultural Lending, GhBudget, to facilitate lending to the agriculture sector. The Ghana Amalgamated Trusts, GHBudget, to support indigenous participation in the banking sector. The Ghana Commodity Exchange, to modernize agricultural transactions and provide security for our farmers. The Ghana Deposit Scheme, to protect depositors' funds. The National Housing and Mortgage Finance Scheme, to provide mortgages to our working class and middle class citizens. The 2 billion CD Credit Guarantee Scheme, to support large businesses, and the CAPBA scheme run by MBSSI to support micro and small and medium enterprises, amongst others, in order to sustain and complement these reforms. Mr. Speaker, we have also established a new National Development Bank, which already has commitments of over $500 million as a wholesale bank to further support these financial institutions. Mr. Speaker, we will see significant investment in infrastructure, especially affordable housing. These interventions will create more jobs and enhance artisanal skills. A few days ago, my colleague, Honorable Attache, and I joined His Excellency President Akufo-Addo to commission 204 new houses at Tema Community 2. These houses were largely constructed and supervised by local contractors and consultants under the National Mortgage and Housing Fund scheme. This project was completed in 9 months amidst COVID-19 pandemic and created over 1,500 jobs. We will replicate this housing model across the country and alongside Agenda 111 District Hospitals program. Mr. Speaker, we expect that our digitalization program in the public sector will improve efficiency and enhance delivery of service. Government introduced a digital addressing system and the National ID program to ensure that all Ghanaians and their dwellings, as well as business locations, are uniquely identified. All these efforts have been made to formalize the economy and improve our global competitiveness. Mr. Speaker, as I indicated earlier in March 2017, I stood here and asked this august House to support this administration turn around the economy with the paucity of resources that we inherited, as in the story of the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. Mr. Speaker, I'm in awe of what God has done in the last 4 years. Not only have we accomplished the miraculous economic turnaround, we have also gathered our 12 baskets left over to begin the implementation of our Ghana 100 billion Ghana Cares Obatampa program. Let me assure you, Mr. Speaker, that he who began a good work of us will carry it on to completion. Ghana is at a breakthrough moment. Our bioperazine is upon us. But, Mr. Speaker, we must, as a nation, be prepared to work hard, to burden share, and to sacrifice for the national good, and to desist from difficult negotiations at such times of a global pandemic. I am confident that the Lord will repay us for the years the locust has eaten and pour us His Spirit on all of us. Mr. Speaker, I want to reassure the House that despite the setbacks from the pandemic, we are on track to recover. We have made adequate budgetary provision to ensure that the elections are conducted in a safe and secure environment. Government has also instituted various security measures to ensure we have peaceful elections and effectively contain all threats. Mr. Speaker, for the purposes of the 2021 expenditure in advance of appropriation, we projected the 2021 first quarter total revenue and grants of 13.3 billion, while total expenditures, including the clearance of arrears, is projected at 24 billion. The results in the projected fiscal deficit of 10.7 billion for the period. Mr. Speaker, to support the 2021 budget and liability management, we plan to source funding from the international capital markets. This will comprise the issuance of sovereign bonds of $3 billion, with the option to increase it to $5 billion should market conditions prove favorable. Out of the amount to be raised, 1.5 billion will be used to support the 2021 budget, and 3.5 billion for liability management. Mr. Speaker, we will require an amount of 27.4 billion to carry on the services of government until the expiration of 3 months from the beginning of the 2021 financial year. The total amount is to cover government operations such as compensation of employees, ex gratia awards, interest and amortization, transfer to statutory funds, critical programs in goods and services, and CAPEX allocations of MDAs. Mr. Speaker, the programs include work on the Agenda 111 district and regional hospitals, which commenced in 2020 to ensure health facilities are available in all deprived places. Currently, 88 site plans have been submitted by the district assemblies, and contractors and consultants are being procured. The rehabilitation of Aviation, and Accra psychiatric hospitals and the construction of the 2 psychiatric hospitals in Kumasi and Tamale would also be fast-tracked. Funds have also been provided to facilitate the reopening of schools in the early part of 2021. If we continue to keep the spread of new infections of the COVID-19 virus at its current low levels. In furtherance of government's TVET agenda, next year will witness the start of the Jobs and Skills Project to support apprenticeships and competency-based training curriculum development in over 100 trade areas and entrepreneurships. Also, we'll see the beginning of construction of our flagship state-of-the-art TVET centers, 2 per region, fully equipped with modern training facilities in 33 trades professions across 11 economic sectors. Mr. Speaker, the details of the expenditure are as follows: compensation of employees, 7.7 billion Ghana cedis, use of goods and services, 1.6 billion Ghana cedis, interest payments, 7 billion Ghana cedis, subsidies, 259 million Ghana cedis, grants to other government units, 4.3 billion Ghana cedis, social benefits, 41 million Ghana cedis, other expenditure, 813 million Ghana cedis, CAPEX, 1.9 billion Ghana cedis, making a total expenditure of 23.665 billion Ghana cedis, arrears clearance of 350 million Ghana cedis, amortization of 3.42 billion Ghana cedis. Total appropriation, Mr. Speaker, 27,434,180,520 Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, this expenditure in advance of appropriation form part of the projected revenue expenditure estimates and financing for 2021, attached as Appendix 1A to 1C. The breakdown of allocations to MDAs for January to March 2021 are also attached as Appendix 2A to 2D. Mr. Speaker, the Comptroller and Accountant General will ensure that all ministries, departments, and agencies operate strictly within the levels set in the expenditure in advance of appropriation to be approved by this august House. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance will submit a more detailed 2021 budget statement and economic policy of government to this august House by March 2021. Mr. Speaker, we are confident that because of God's guidance and support, the President's leadership and our performance, Ghanaians will return the MPP government to power for 4 more years for Ghana to do even more, and also to continue with our economic revitalization and transformation program, to improve the quality of livelihood for our citizens who are, in the end, the people who matter. Every decision or program that we have is to ensure that our people who matter benefit from this. We should recap the dividends from this transparent government in a democratic governance that the MPP has been able to implement. Mr. Speaker, specifically, we will continue to implement measures that will result in significant improvements in business regulations and their implementation. digitization to improve quality and transparency of public service delivery, expanding access to finance for Ghanaian businesses, skills training, and energy sector reform when Ghanaians give us another mandate to ensure that Ghana goes beyond aid. Mr. Speaker, I feel truly blessed and have such the opportunity to have been here in these past 4 years to work for President Akufo-Addo and to present the President's remarkable, destiny-changing, economic regenerating, institutional renewing policies and programs. And I'm thankful particularly for the help and support I have received from this august House. Together with this Parliament, the Ministry of Finance alone has passed more than 50 bills into law in the last 4 years, and I and all of the team at the Ministry of Finance humbly thank you, Mr. Speaker, and honorable members for this opportunity. Let me, Mr. Speaker, in the spirit of the Nkosua and Kabom budget of 2020, leave us with Psalm 133, how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity, for then the hand bestows his blessings. We are a chosen people, Mr. Speaker. We perceive what he is doing, and we must be obedient to his call and be joyful and grateful for better, for the battle continues to remain the Lord's. Right Honorable Speaker, in conclusion, I humbly request this august House to, by a resolution, approve an amount of 24,434,434,180,520 million cedis as expenditure in advance of appropriation to carry on the services of government until the expiration of 3 months from the beginning of the 2021 financial year. We also request approval for the issuance of sovereign bonds of US $33 billion with the option to increase it to $5 billion should market conditions prove favorable. Mr. Speaker, I so move, and I accordingly present the papers to the House.
Tabled as in the presentation of the substantive budget. No comment is allowed after the presentation by the Honourable Minister at this stage, and I refer to the committee for consideration and immediate report. Honourable Minister, at this stage, we thank you for appearing before the House. We thank you for appearing before the House, making your statement, which we refer to the Finance Committee accordingly.
Yes. So accordingly, what is on the order paper has been done in respect of the motion item. Where's your order paper?
Well, you're still here on your election bureau, Citi FM and Citi TV. You just heard the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta on the expenditure in advance of appropriation. Now, after hours of waiting and pre-budget discussions, he finally showed up around a few minutes to 2 p.m., made his presentation and has concluded. And some of the key things, just to walk you through, essentially, I mean, after highlighting the fact that they inherited an economy in dire straits, they managed to go on to implement some policies and programs to move the economy onto a trajectory of growth, growing at an average of 7%, that's in the past 3 years or so. Then also speaks of some of the key policies they have implemented. Key amongst them being the free senior high school policy, the fact that they've commenced the 100 billion Ghana Cares or Batampa program, export of goods from the Planting for Foods and Jobs program, improvement in Ghana's gross international reserves. Then he took time off to comment on the recent topical issue of whether or not Ghana is exhibiting traits of a HIPC country. He went on to deny the fact that, seeing our situation as we have it, we are getting to, should I say, we can be described as a HIPC country. He believes that Ghana has made a turn and is on a path of no return. And he also mentions that conditions for a rebound of the country's economy following the devastating impact of COVID-19 in the year 2021 are ripe. The conditions are there for the economy to rebound. Now, before he went on to, make his call for an approval of a total amount of 27.434 billion Ghana cedis to be spent in the first quarter of 2021. He gave us an update on how the economy has performed from the beginning of the year to September. Now, he did mention that revenue and revised targets were exceeded on the revenue side as well as on the expenditure side. Revenue, for example, from January to September hit around 36 billion or so, exceeding the target by almost 1 billion. Expenditure was around 71.3 billion, exceeding its target, bringing the fiscal deficit as at the end of the third quarter of 2020 to about 9% of GDP, as against a target of around 8%. Now then, he moves on to speak about the target for 2021. He mentioned a 5.7% growth rate and also a fiscal deficit of 8.3, which is way above the 5% threshold when it comes to the Fiscal Responsibility Act. But he did say that seeing the impact of COVID, we are likely to return onto that path of fiscal discipline, that we will be recording a fiscal deficit of 5% or lower in should I say, sooner rather than later. And he mentioned the need for African businesses to leverage, Ghanaian businesses to leverage the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which is expected to commence in January 2021, leverage it to, spur growth for Ghanaian businesses. And then also, he also mentioned the fact that there will be significant investments in infrastructure, citing the 204 affordable houses that were recently commissioned by himself, and that's I think during this week. Now, he spoke about the targets they have set for themselves for first quarter of 2021. Now, revenue, mind you, he is targeting revenue to be rating from January to March of 2021 of 13.3 billion. Now, expenditure has been pegged at 24 billion. I mean, let me just repeat this: 13.3 billion when it comes to revenue, and in 2021 first quarter. And then on the expenditure side, he's looking at 24 billion. Now, he did mention that it might hit the international bonds market for financing of the deficit, and then takes time out to actually give a breakdown of the composition of the 27.434 billion he is asking for. Now, if he starts off by mentioning the fact that compensation of employees alone is expected to take up 7.7 billion Ghana cedis. Now he moves under compensation. You have things like wages and salaries, social contributions, pensions, gratuities, social security. Now use of goods and services also, he's projecting that we would spend 1.6 billion in the first quarter of 2021 alone. Now interest payment on the our debt is expected to hover around 7 billion Ghana cedis. Now when you move to subsidies, then the figure drops to 250 million Ghana cedis. And then grants to other government units like the National Health Fund, Education Trust Fund, Road Fund, Petroleum Related Fund and the likes is expected to cost or come up to 4.3 billion Ghana cedis. And then you move to areas like social benefits. Under that, you have things like Lifeline consumers, for electricity. He's looking at 41 million on that side. Now, when you combine all of this, you get a total of 27.434 billion Ghana cedis that the Finance Minister is asking the August House to approve to be spent in the first quarter of 2021. Now, mind you, like we said earlier, the expenditure in advance of appropriation presentation was also done by the former Finance Minister, Seth Terkper. Now, in his time, he actually asked for 2.75 billion US dollars. That at the time was around 11 billion Ghana cedis. Now, 4 years down the line, the Finance Minister is asking to spend 27.4 billion Ghana cedis. Now, just to put that in context for you, you find that if you look at the figures, how the 27.4 billion compares to, amounts or expenditure in the first quarter of, say, the past 3 years. In 2019, for example, first quarter, provisional figures we had was around 14.87 billion. Now you move to first quarter of 2021, you find that provisional figures we had expenditure that was around 20.99 billion Ghana cedis. And now for the first quarter of the year after the 2020 elections, the Finance Minister is asking that he be giving 27.4 billion Ghana cedis to spend on recurrent expenditure. You're still watching our special coverage of the advanced budget presentation by the Finance Minister. He just ended his presentation. We will be heading to Parliament soon to pick some reactions with my colleague Duke Opoku-Mensah. But before that, let's take a quick break. We'll return with more.
Election 2020, Ghana makes a choice. Tracking and bringing reports of the presidential and parliamentary campaigns across the length and breadth of this nation.
Analyzing campaign activities and election data with our panelists on the Voters' Diary.
The Voters' Diary is the most factual, instructive, and balanced election 2020 analysis program on television.
The Voters' Diary every weekday on